Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Well, welcome back, Mack Pack. Sorry about the technical difficulties we are having today. I was literally working up to the minute up to the show here on today's show. We are action-packed, full of information. There's absolutely no way, no chance that we are ever going to get through all of the today's show's topics that we have, but we may be chewing on these for the next 2, potentially 3 episodes. We'll see. I'm going to try to get it all down to a nice bite-size chunk. For those of you who are new to the program, you're just tuning in today, my name is Mack Worley. I am the host of On the Move with Mack Worley. Please get ready to have your ears tintillated with lots of facts about foreign policy today. I am a libertarian with conservative leanings. I typically agree with libertarians on almost everything, with the exception of their foreign policy on open borders and weakening the military by bringing back troops from overseas. And I'm only against that for some pretty specific reasons, because I think that we're stuck in the way that we are right now in having our troops positioned overseas and whatnot because of the petrodollar. And because of the way the economy works right now. I advocate for ways to get out of this situation, and I also understand that open borders, as far as open borders is concerned, there are many issues that we need to be dealing with when it comes to that before we can get to this utopian society. So I think it's a little idealistic to assume that we can be open borders, but libertarians do not. First of all, today's episode, this is a Libertarian's Foreign Policy Warning. This is episode 134 of our program, and I'm going to go ahead and just do some quick housekeeping real fast before we get into the topics, and I bring in my buddy Mark here. He's also a Libertarian. We're going to be chatting this stuff out. Don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. Also, don't forget to check us out on our website's shop. Click the shop link on the homepage, OnTheMoveShow.com. Click the shop link. We got hundreds of products for sale on there. You guys definitely want to check that out. It's got like the Be Libertarian shirt, the hashtag Never Trump shirt, the Bear Arms T-shirt, and we have all sorts of other stuff. Original designs on T-shirts, phone cases, mugs, all sorts of stuff. So sweaters too, hoodies. Anyway, check that stuff out. You'll be supporting the program. Help spread the message of liberty. If you like what we're doing, we certainly appreciate it. Anyway, now, Mark, are you there?
I am.
Okay.
Mac.
So if you haven't been able to figure out from today's little bumper that I kind of gave there as far as my policy, today is me as a libertarian. I'm a conservative libertarian, and I'm trying to basically talk to other libertarians and say, hey, look, I want to have this utopian kind of idea where there's no governments too. I would love that. But I understand right now that there are many, many foreign players out there that pose serious threats to this kind of idealistic society, and what I'm saying is not necessarily go full-fledged fascist and become a completely nationalist nation where we're only worried about ourselves and kind of Donald Trump's approach to this election. I'm saying there are free market things that we can do, and explaining, first of all, I think the open border policy is basically just a ideological disagreement. I don't think that and perhaps I'm wrong, because I know you support this philosophy.
You are wrong, Mac. You're always wrong if you disagree with me. But go ahead.
well, tell me your perspective, because I really want to understand what you guys mean about open borders, because I see having open borders as a threat. Because anybody can come into the country who wants, which can drastically change our demographic, and also.
No.
Well,
I don't.
I don't mean it for. I don't mean it for what you're talking about. I think you're thinking about it in more of a national sense. Give me 1 second. Let me explain that, okay? Like what's happening with Russia, all right? They're sending people, Russian citizens, into Ukraine and places like this. This is a tactic that they've used. And then they can say that, oh, well, we need to have some kind of involvement in that area because we have citizens, ethnic Russians, who are in that area. I can see some countries being able to use that kind of tactic through an infiltration of sorts. I can also see how right now, with the way that the Democrats are handing things out, we do know, and it is now verifiable, that these illegal immigrants, from studies that I was looking at last week, I think, they were talking about how most of these illegals that have been participating in these studies are Democrat voters. So we have a very good idea that these.
If they're illegal, how can they vote?
Well, no. If they're potential Democrat voters if they get elected, this is kind of what I'm concerned about. Is it tipping the scale? This immigration process tipping the scale in favor of the Democrats, who are going to continue with the handouts and basically their political agenda. The Democrats, the way they're doing it now, the statist left, they are continuing to promise handouts to group after group after group, and the way that they're doing it with because by the way, the whole, even Donald Trump's policy, and this is why this election I really don't care. Do you really care about this election, Mark? Do you really?
Yes.
I don't even care.
This is a really big deal. This is the first time that I've ever been afraid in an election, so I care. I definitely care. This is, Donald Trump is the biggest threat to all of our civil liberties that we've ever had in any president in history. I mean, since maybe around the Civil War days. So this is time to get out and vote. In my opinion, of course, vote for Johnson. But
make that case real quick. Why Donald Trump would be so detrimental to the nation, and then I want you to also consider how Hillary Clinton could be detrimental. You make that case.
Sure, and I mean, I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton, and I don't think Hillary Clinton is a good candidate for president of the United States. I certainly believe she's more qualified than Donald Trump, but I think that Gary Johnson is the most qualified out of all of them. When you have executive experience is leading a state, leading a country, having those types of executive authorities that how this type of power works. Donald Trump doesn't. Donald Trump is, for lack of a better, term, so self-serving that his comments about how he would basically shut down media, or how he would, his intentions to either throw media in jail or to sue them for libel or to do whatever it is that he feels on a whim is going to satisfy his own self-serving behavior. That's what he's going to do. And that's how he behaves. And so not only is this going to be somebody who is, a detriment to foreign policy, but when you're talking about civil liberties at home, this is a man who has talked about how he is going to not only not end the drug war, but going to expand the drug war and quote-unquote win it. He's going to win the drug war. He's going to, expand the powers of the DEA. He's going to make things so that not only are we looking at, building a wall within, on our border, but fighting a long-term drug war that has always proven to fail. The drug war is the biggest threat to our civil liberties ever. Now, while the last administration and the administration before and the administration before have not necessarily been good when it comes to the drug war, Clinton, W., and Obama have all increasingly or successfully been decreasing the level of the drug war involvement. This is a man who has promised to increase it to the point where he feels as though he's going to quote-unquote win it. Now, to a man who never loses, and anybody who feels as though, this is the guy that can be, as everybody has said, antagonized by a tweet. What is it going to be when you have journalists all across the country who are constantly belittling, if not talking, negatively about his policy when he is in office, if he ever is? Okay. I mean, just think about the world that we live in.
So you're concerned
would
about
live
him.
in if he.
You're concerned about him basically, going off the handle. You don't think he's, as the media's been saying a lot, basically, he has he's fit to actually be president in temperament, correct?
Well, think about this. Just think about the First Amendment. The freedom of press. This is a man who has blatantly jeopardized the freedom of press. The freedom of religion, where he's blatantly said, I'm going to ban Muslims from coming into this country. The freedom of speech. Anybody who particularly wants to say anything negative about him, he flies off the handle in
You're
an
not going to get any argument
way.
from here on that. I agree
so
with you.
So what I'm saying is that when you're talking about civil liberties, the First Amendment is the primary civil liberty. This is also a man that's threatened the Second Amendment, even though now he flip-flops on it and says, well, the Second Amendment people are great, and maybe they should take care of Hillary Clinton, which is inciting violence, in my opinion. This is a man who's basically so dangerous to any fabric of any substance of that the United States has to it that he is a dictator in training, and he hasn't had much training. And I think that any of your listeners who are on the fence about Donald Trump should really just picture what a world would be like when you have a man like that as the leader of this country. It is absolutely scary. It's not dangerous.
I want to comment on this, but I want to later, me and you hash out this whole open border and immigration kind of thing.
Oh, is that what we were talking about?
Yeah, but I kind of went into this because I don't think I personally don't care about this election because I think that no matter what happens here, we're going to see huge economic problems, and I believe that Donald Trump is going to set it off if he gets elected. But and then in addition to that, there are some very negative side effects here. I think regardless, either way, I could go into all these rabbit holes of things that I think Donald Trump's going to do wrong. Regardless, what I'm boiling this down to on this election, why I don't care, because I know Gary Johnson, first of all, he's not going to win. And second of all, he's not libertarian enough for me to really be passionate about him. I have issues with him as a candidate, and I don't like the fact that he's pro TPP, mandatory. He's for mandatory vaccinations. He's for a carbon fee. These aren't free market solutions. These aren't free market principles. The entire reason for me voting for Gary Johnson in the first place was so that I could be, in line with my ideological principles. And one of the main things of that is, sovereignty, national sovereignty. I don't want our superseding our sovereignty over to someone else through things like the TPP. I like also the non-aggression principle. This is a very, very core foundational value for me, and he's for forcing people to take vaccines without their consent. How is that not violate the non-aggression?
I don't even know why we even talk about this. I haven't even really heard about this until I talked with you about it.
This is. I
mean, vaccinations are nothing. If you want to talk
well, hold on. I don't even want to dive into these issues. 1 second. But that's why I can't vote for him. Hillary Clinton, you know why I can't vote for her. Come on, she's a progressive. That's obvious. She's like the antithesis of everything that I support. She's for growing the government. She's going to try to come after your guns. She said so, and
you're
so
a sexist. That's
so
all it
have
is.
Her cronies for years. I'm not a sexist. I would love a woman president. That would be great.
You hate women.
No, because according to the if you listen to Hollywood, we could pay them less. If I really hated women, we could pay her like 72 cents on the dollar, and it would be like, woo, we're saving. We want to cut some spending. Look, if that was true, then that's how I would do it. But it's just not true. I want women to be able to get the first president. But why would you pick this woman, the most corrupt U.S. politician in our history? She's operating a slush fund where she doesn't have to pay any taxes at all, and she's able to live out of this fund. And by the way, she's accepting money in pay-to-play operations with foreign countries around the world. Yeah, this woman I can't do. She's also in favor of these big trade agreements that try to centralize more power in the hands of government. I can't do it. But Donald Trump, all right, the reason why I really don't care about this election, and I have to tell you guys out there, so many people want to argue with me about this now. They don't understand why I'm a never Trumper. They can't get it. Again, If I wanted to do a protest vote and like try to get somebody elected who I believed in, I can't do that because Gary Johnson isn't doing it. Donald Trump I disagree with. So ideologically, I don't see any difference really between him and her. She's a statist, globalist, wanting to basically create more government bureaucracies, try to increase the government bigger in our government and globally. But Donald Trump's he's a nationalist styled. Look, I'm not calling him Hitler. I don't make that comparison.
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
But what I'm saying
I'll do
is
it all day long.
that they have incredibly similar platforms. That's all I'll say. All right. For me, I don't want to increase the police state. Donald Trump has promised to be the high tax, big government, police state candidate. If that's your candidate, okay, that's not. Oh, and anti-free market. FYI, anti-free market. Which, by the way, Gary Johnson is anti-free market too because of carbon taxes. What the crap, people?
Oh, come on. Seriously, when it comes to carbon taxes, now here's the point about personal responsibility. This is the idea about how is it that you create responsibility. Now, if we're going to call corporations persons, let's go ahead and call this what it is. If you're talking about how a company emits a certain amount of pollution into the air, how is it that they are responsible for that? How is a corporation responsible? Now, if you're calling it personally responsible, how are they held responsible?
I question CO2 being a pollutant. It wasn't a pollutant up until recently. Again, the only reason why it's considered a pollutant now is because the Obama administration's cooking the books on these climate change numbers. They have to keep changing the data every time they come out with one of these freaking climate projection models. They've had to change every single one of these models to reflect the numbers because they're wrong, because there is no mathematical formula to say how many units of CO2 you add to the atmosphere will add 1 degree of climate change, because it is not a settled science that climate change is changing because of man-made activity. It's not settled. This debate is still wide open. And
here's the thing. I'm not saying, and I never have said, that human beings are the cause or the primary cause of climate change. Climate is going to change. That's not a doubt. Things are going to change. Change is the inevitable law of life. But you cannot deny that human beings and manufacturing companies and industry are polluting things. When you're talking about polluting the air, you're talking about polluting the water. Things are being. I mean, look at Los Angeles. I mean, look at the smog. Look at China.
I'm talking about carbon. This whole conversation is about carbon. Gary Johnson.
Do you not believe that carbon is the cause of that smog?
I don't believe that carbon is a pollutant. Carbon is not a pollutant. Do you know what carbon is?
What is the cause of all of that smog?
It's not carbon dioxide, Mark. Carbon dioxide is transparent. It is not. It is an odorless, tasteless, colorless gas. There is no way that carbon dioxide itself can be the cause of that smog. It's impossible.
What is the cause of it, then?
We're not talking about that. I'm talking about carbon. Your candidate right now wants to tax people who produce carbon, not
because
smog.
I think there is. I think carbon has a. I think it
unfortunately,
has a role
this debate is not out. You may think it is, but it's literally impossible.
Yeah, I just said I think it is.
Well,
I disagree with you.
I'm just saying it's literally impossible for that carbon dioxide to be the cause of the smog. And if you want to protect against the other things that are causing smog that's in gas, like for example in like your car emissions or something, go ahead, find those things, find out if they are actually pollutants. But this is the conversation. This is what climate change, this whole debate spins around, is that they have now classified carbon dioxide. I just blew it out. You're telling me that that's a pollutant? That's a plant food.
I just farted it out.
No, that was methane, and that may actually be
okay. Well, maybe there it is. Well,
yeah.
maybe that's it.
But there's a difference, and your candidate. If you're telling me that your candidate doesn't understand this principle that carbon dioxide is something other than methane or some other gas, but yet he wants to tax it, I'm a little confused, and I'm further confused because this is supposed to be a libertarian for free market principles. But I didn't. I was just mentioning that. That was just a footnote in what I'm talking about. The reason why I don't care about this election right now is because all three of these candidates are going to take us in another direction, and I think that this government cannot continue to grow because of the economic problems on the horizon. We have a lot of stuff happening with our economy that I've been screaming about for a long time. I argue that by 2018, this whole house of cards comes crashing down if an external event doesn't cause it to happen beforehand, like a terror attack, like some foreign nation attacking us, like a World War III type scenario, which we are incredibly close to. And that's why I want to talk about like the border policies within libertarian philosophy, why I don't think it will work in the world that we live in right now. Having an open border and allowing ourselves to become so intertwined with people, with nations out there that are potentially our enemy, like Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, being dependent on something from a really war-torn area that is completely unstable, like the Middle East, on their oil, when we could be energy independent and not have that problem, not have that big threat to our security. All these chickens are going to come home to roost here shortly, and it's all going to happen while our economy is at its weakest. And I think it's a free market. What was that? What was that in the background?
That was a chicken.
Okay, there we go.
Chickens are coming home to roost. Sorry.
There we go. So look, I think that all of this stuff is going to happen while our economy is crashing, and I think we have a lot of threats. This is why the libertarian philosophy I don't think will work. And I want to talk about all the issues here that we have. I know you agree with intertwining our economy, but you also agree with becoming energy independent, right?
Of course.
The reason why we're not, and what I'm proposing is not to close ourselves off with a border and not to allow anybody that will benefit our country to come into the country. I'm not saying we close off, build a wall around our country. What I'm saying is a free market approach. I think we just have disagreements in what a free market approach is and what a suicidal free market approach is.
Sure.
I think that it is suicidal to allow just anybody to come over because other countries have historically used that kind of thing to their advantage. In addition, the war on terror that we're facing right now, we're seeing how that's going to take a big impact, have a big effect on the West, the Western world, with all these mass migrants coming up into places like Germany, into places like Sweden, and we're going to see a lot of these nationalist tensions starting to rise up between citizens in this country, their government officials, and these open border policies. And in addition, it makes your country vulnerable for attack. These are the things that I'm concerned about. I'm very much pro-immigration. I want us to have a great immigration process. I want us to have, streamlined immigration. But I think that we should be selective in who we allow into our country because America is the greatest freaking country in the world. And it's not that way because our people are better, we're superior beings, we're genetically better than everyone else. No, it's because our ideology allows people to be free. Having freedom, having the ability to do what is in your own self-interest has lifted more people out of poverty than any other form of government. Our government is the least worst government of all. And I think that we should continue building on this, and we certainly shouldn't be allowing people into the country who, number one, they're going to take jobs away from U.S. citizens, and they're not necessarily going to be a skilled laborer. Believe me, we have enough unskilled laborers in this country right now. We don't have a shortage there. Let's bring in, if we need nurses, which we do, by the way, let's bring those in. If we need engineers, let's bring those in. I don't think we actually need any more of those. I think I was looking at job numbers. We're pretty good on those. But as far as, Americans who are doing things like machining, we could use some machinists. Yeah, we're real low on that. Let's bring in some foreigners to do that job. But this is a job interview. You want to come to the greatest country on earth. You want to have the opportunities that you'll never have in your home country. You're going through an interview process. And the reason why we're exceptional, the reason why America is exceptional is because we're free, and we'll go out there and we'll headhunt all of your best. Your best and brightest, we want them. We want them. Let's take them. We'll have your scientists. We'll have the brightest minds. The free market here will explode. And other countries will be left behind in the dust, technologically speaking, because slaves can't compete and innovate when competing against free people. They just can't. When you don't have incentive to build, when you don't have incentive to do these things, it'll never get done. If the world, as it were left to its own devices without America, we would have no internet. we would have no internet, which, by the way, I wanted to talk to you guys. This is a reminder. Call your representatives and tell them to support the Protecting Internet Freedom Act. Again, the Protecting Internet Freedom Act. We're about ready to turn the internet over, an American invention, to Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and allow them to censor our internet. No, no, no. Not on my watch. Please contact your representative. Let them know to support the Protecting the Internet Freedom Act. Mark, what do you think?
About what?
About everything, man. What do you think? As far as my idea here, as far as immigration, all right? Because this is a big one that we disagree on, all right? And
I don't know so much that we disagree on the fundamental principles of it. I think we might just disagree on the vernacular of it. I mean, the idea of an open border, I'm not saying that anybody and everybody should just be able to just flow in and live here. What I am saying about
but that's what an open
people
border
who want
is,
a worker's visa, well, not necessarily. No, I mean, I think
you could just walk across, and this is what I hear. Now, maybe I'm misinterpreting libertarians on this. I don't want to throw up a straw man argument. So correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't the purest argument from a libertarian perspective is that there should be no government control between borders? It should be like the EU, and you should be able to migrate and go wherever you want without government hindrance.
It's a tough one. It really is. I mean, when I think about what defines a country when you're looking at borders, language, and culture, and yeah, I mean, should we look at this as like the European Union where anybody and everybody can just free flow in and out of it? You know, ideally speaking, that would be a great situation, in my opinion, especially if you're looking at, you know, like
well, how's that working out? How's that working out in the European Union right now?
Time heals all wounds, and it hasn't been around as long.
Hold on. Your answer to the... I just want to make sure we're talking about the same things. Your answer to the migrant crisis, where there's roughly about 1 million migrants that are rushing up into Germany, and places like Switzerland are now the rape capital of the world. People in these Western societies are now literally getting their asses handed to them by gangs of Muslim men who are going around assaulting people and raping women, and now they're having to re-educate the migrants that come into these societies and say, hey, migrants, just to give you a heads up, here's a little educational video. Just because a woman's skin is showing, you are not allowed to rape them. If you can see their hair, it's not an open invitation to, try to assault them sexually. This is what they're facing, and this is why Angela Merkel is facing a huge backlash, and there's a rise of neo-Nazism in the European Union. So what I'm saying about open borders is that you have free trade amongst the countries that are touching the borders. B, you have an immigration policy that makes it accessible to bring people not only into the country to work, but that there is a path to citizenship. I'm not looking. I never even considered an open border to be the way that you were talking about with the European Union, where everybody just comes in at any time. This is
ideally
the way I
long term. I mean, you can look at it and go.
You've been a libertarian longer than me, so I just want to clarify, because I absolutely last thing I want to do here is set up a straw man argument and present the weak argument that's easy for me to defeat in an argument, because I'm not trying to debate here. I want to get to genuine facts. Is a purist libertarian in philosophy, are they saying that it should be the world itself, because our borders are open and our economies are intertwined, that will prevent all kind of incentive for someone to attack or to violate, or like for a country to impede or something like that, and we don't have to worry about so much having a military. Let's scale back the military, dude, because people are inherently good, and we should just not worry about Vladimir Putin and stuff, man. He's all right, right? That's the kind of military. That's what I get from the libertarian philosophy on open borders.
I don't look at it that way, and nor have I had that conversation with anybody in that way. The way that, and I mean, I don't call myself a purist to that extent. My philosophy is very libertarian or very free market capitalism. Which to me, the inevitable political part of that is libertarianism. But the idea of open borders by themselves has always been, yes, I mean, you need to have a strong military. You need to have borders.
So do you agree with Gary Johnson's immigration policy now?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that if you want to if you want to come into this country and work here, then there should be a background check, and then you should have a Social Security card so that you can pay the appropriate amount of taxes.
And if you're here illegally, but if you're currently here illegally, what then? Because he's saying amnesty.
I don't know that he's saying amnesty. What I'm saying is that I think he's saying that there needs to be a clearer path to citizenship.
That's amnesty.
And that's what I agree
That is amnesty. The definition of amnesty is forgiveness of a transgression. And if you're forgiving them of a transgression and allowing them to be a citizen, that is amnesty. That's what you're doing.
But if no, they got to get in line. If you're found, like, say, for instance, you're busted of a crime, and this is the way I believe. If you are here illegally and you are busted of a crime, you're deported. You're deported immediately. You're found to be here illegally. It's not that you go through a trial.
It's a crime to be here illegally.
But my point is that I'm not going to... But I'm not interested in going in and breaking up a bunch of homes. If you're not found to be committing any kind of a crime,
I get where you're going with that. But let me ask you, all right? If you don't want to break up families, all right? This is what you just said. You don't want to break up families. This is giving preferential treatment.
Even said that. What I'm saying is, I'm not interested in going in and breaking down doors. I'm not interested in trying to locate them as though they're spies.
Okay, then you're giving preferential treatment to people who are non-U.S. citizens. The government will break up
who are non-violent, who are not creating.
Try not to pay your taxes, Mark. Don't pay your taxes, and see if the government doesn't come knocking down your door. If you violate a federal law, the federal government will come knocking down your door. You're a U.S. citizen. And you're saying that these people who broke a federal law and, in fact, are actually breaking the same federal law that you are, they don't get their door kicked in. They're not paying taxes. So if you don't pay your taxes, they'll kick in your door. But you want special preferential treatment for people who are breaking our law. You don't want to break up their families. But we're getting the same deal. We have to follow the federal law. Why does somebody who comes here illegally not have to, Mark?
I just don't think that's the country that we want to have.
That's the country that we live in right now. Look, as a libertarian, all right, I am absolutely free market. I'm absolutely I want us to have self-incentive. I don't want the government on your back telling what you can and can't do. I think that you should be left to your own devices. The government that we currently have is the best one there's ever been. It has many, many flaws. One of the flaws is this use of force. I don't like the whole idea that we have a taxation system. And in fact, I would actually love to consider an option. I don't want to dive into this too deep, of voluntary taxism. I would be willing to pay as an American citizen for police. I would be willing to pay for a military. I'd even be willing to pay for a hospital. If there wasn't one in my area, I would gladly pay for that out of my own pocket by choice. If they send me a little tax donation form at the end of the year, do you want to keep having hospitals? Because if you don't donate, we're going to shut this one down. Do you want to keep having your police department? Because if you don't donate to this, then you guys are going to be left on your own. If people want those services and the free market can't provide it, then yeah, the government should be able to do that. I think the free market could provide it, but I think people should be willing to donate to the services that they're getting. But I don't want to dive too far down into that. But this is really my biggest problem, where I see a flaw in our form of government. But that's the way it is. And if we're going to apply standards to people where force is going to be used against them, which I don't like, and I wish there was a way around that, and I think there is, but nobody's going to be listening to me on that donation idea, I'm sure. And I'm sure it has lots of holes. I'm sure there'll be some problems with that. And that's why, look, this is the most perfect government ever. And that's why we should protect it. And by protecting it, we should be having the same standard across the board, Mark. How is it okay that we treat foreigners better than we treat our own citizens who came here legally, by the way?
It's not okay.
Okay, so do you disagree with that policy now, or what?
Do I disagree with what policy?
Not wanting to break up families, not wanting to kick in doors of illegals who have come here illegally, entered our country, violate a federal law. What do you think, man?
What I think is not only how expensive something like that would be to go in and do, I start to look at it and say, what kind of a country do we start to look at? It's a police state. We start to go in and where the United States government is basically prying into the business of every single household, just trying to find somebody that they think might be illegal.
Look, I'm not saying that.
I'm very much against, the federal government. I mean, when you're looking at the federal government in a situation of even tax evasion, where these IRS agents are armed and they're trained to know how to shoot and they're trained to attack. That's not the country I want to live in, but that's the country that it is right now. So I'm against that. So when you're talking about, like, if you fail to pay your taxes, do you think that the government should be able to go and do that? Absolutely not. I disagree with that. But in the same way that I look at it and say, I don't think that the federal government should be going in and trying to knock in doors just to try to find somebody, whether they're illegal or not. If you're busted and you have there's some kind of a crime that you've committed,
so do you
whether it be a small violation of shoplifting or whether it be a situation where you've committed an act of murder or rape, you are thrown out of this country immediately. I get that. I mean, I'm totally okay with that if that's the case. If you can't provide identity and if you find that you're...
Do you think by not deporting people, because this would be us saying we're just not going to enforce this law, which, by the way, that's not the law is a law, and that's not for the president to decide. This is not something that the president can just say, oh, I'm going to executive order this crap over here. I'm going to executive order this crap.
Trump would.
Yeah, Trump would, but that's not the president's job. Our law is our law, and if we don't enforce our law, do you think that would create an incentive for people to come here because they know they'll be able to stay? And we're not going to come looking for them. So I don't want people coming here, first of all, who don't want to be an American. I don't. If you don't want to be part of this experiment that we have going on here in Liberty, then don't come here. And if you want to be an American, you want to embrace that philosophy, then great. Come on and welcome aboard. And by the way, let me see your resume. What skills do you have? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're a nurse. Sweet. Come on in. That kind of stuff. That's great. And also, throughout this process, if we're looking around and we're taking applications for citizenship, and we see that somebody's coming from, I don't know, let's say Saudi Arabia. You're a nurse. Okay, we'll put you down at the bottom of the list for nurses. And if we do decide to get to you, we're gonna thoroughly vet the hell out of you to make sure that you're not related to Osama bin Laden or something. That kind of thing. Do you disagree with that, Mark?
I mean, wouldn't it be great if unilaterally we could have a policy that we could just go ahead and assert with our, I mean, yeah, if we're talking hyperbole and if we're talking about, a utopia, sure. I mean, we should be selective about who we allow into this country, and we should be selective about which countries we allow to come into this country. And I think, for the most part, we've done an all right job, although there are a lot of problems with the system, and that's what I'm talking about when it comes to, I think, why I agree with Gary Thompson for the most part, is that we need to make a clearer path and something that's a little bit easier, because when I started looking into and researching what it takes in order to become a United States citizen, it is a ridiculously complex and challenging path.
It takes 10 years to become a United States citizen, thousands of dollars and lots of time, and you have to study and all this stuff.
Or would you just want to go ahead and just do it illegally? And that's where I'm saying it's the kind of thing where it's not this kind of a scale or a spectrum in between and saying, I've done it half right. You're either illegal or you're not. Yeah. And so the idea here is that, and I mean, I don't want to throw this into another, argument, but I mean, hearing about some of the arguments that I hear on, my friends, including yourself, on the pro-life side, where we're like, look at all of these opportunities.
Let's break on that. I don't want to go into that because it's going to be a rabbit hole. We got to come to a commercial break. When we come back, we'll pick up right there, Mark. You start about that. Finish your point on there, and then from there. Guys out there, I want to give you guys the featured topics for today. Our first segment here has gone a little over. We're going to talk, again, I wanted to remind you about calling your representative to tell them to support the Protecting Internet Freedom Act. We're about to hand over control to Iran, China, North Korea, and Russia to be able to censor you. Contact your representatives. We're going to talk about how there's recent development in the news between Russia and the United States. Russia is now claiming that the U.S. is helping ISIS and bombing the Syrian government forces. What you need to know. Also, I want to talk about Russian hacking capability. How does Russian cyber hacking threaten U.S. national security? Is Russia using the Syrian refugee crisis as a weapon? Yes. The answer is yes. Holy crap, the answer is yes. We're all doomed. I also want to talk about Iranian confrontations with the United States military are up by 50% this year. And what is Iran thinking? I want to kind of get into their mind, try to figure out, because if you're not aware, Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia are basically the guys on the block that you need to worry about right now who are interested in confrontation and filling power vacuums that the United States has created. And these people are trying to project their force outward from their country. Again, this is where I disagree with some libertarians. This is why we're going to focus on this. This is kind of a foreign policy conversation today that we're having. Then I want to talk about why Iran is pumping oil like crazy and how they're considering a slowdown now. Let's try to get ourselves into their mind. Again, there's no way we're going to have time to get to all this show today. I want to talk about China's renminbi. And how it's slated to be added to the IMF's SDR currency basket in October, and why this matters to you. So if we don't get to all this stuff, please listen to our next podcast, because we got more stuff here anyway. And then I want to talk about why the Chinese currency manipulation has helped them and what exactly it's done. I want to talk about why it's important to have a strong military and energy independence, like we've kind of been talking about already. And I want to talk about how becoming energy independent is a free market concept and not isolationist. Lastly, why libertarians should reconsider their foreign policy on open borders in relation to dealing with foreign nations, immigration, mass migration, and infiltration. We'll be right back after this break, gang. You don't want to go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. All right, sorry, today's kind of wonky because I've got way too much show. You have no idea. I've spent the entire afternoon, morning, just going over articles about foreign policy. Because I looked this week and I see we were attacked in New York. Oh my God, bombed in New York, and the media is more concerned about the fact that Donald Trump said the word bomb and that he overreacted. Mark, you heard this on the news?
Yeah.
What do you think? Should we be more focused on the fact that he said bomb or the fact that we were bombed?
The fact that we were bombed, and the fact that, you hear about the Gary Johnson gaffe where he said, I'm just glad that nobody got hurt, when he really meant, I'm pretty sure he really meant nobody got killed. And so people are just freaking out on the fact that he is.
That's funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's pretty clear that, I mean, obviously when you're hearing about people who got bombed, 23 injured, and then you also hear about, 9 people getting stabbed in Minnesota, where you're like, okay, obviously people got hurt. It's just, nobody got killed.
Yeah.
So it was pretty clear
I
that
thought there was 29.
happened.
How many? Nobody died from the explosion in New York?
No, from what I heard, nobody died.
Oh, thank goodness! Wow, I thought I saw.
And that's
29.
what my point is. That's what I'm saying is that I think that's exactly what he meant to say. I mean, campaigning is tough, and I'm not giving him a free pass on it, but it's the kind of thing where it's like Donald Trump has made ridiculous assertions, and Hillary Clinton has lied through her teeth. When you look at somebody like Gary Johnson, and he's been on the campaign trail for nonstop. I actually met him and got to see him yesterday in Seattle, which is a great rally, by the way. But this is a guy that's doing this stuff nonstop. He's working 18 hours a day. He said hurt instead of killed. Who cares about this stuff? What really matters is that, this was actually a terrorist bombing. And the media is saying this is a terrorist bombing. I mean, I didn't even hear anything about Donald Trump saying anything like that. I heard about the Gary Johnson thing, and then I also heard the fact that the media is calling this an actual terrorist attack.
Yeah, so when it initially happened, Donald Trump came out without the information. It was like there's a bomb that went off. He did it like seconds after it happened, apparently, and he said bomb. And now all that's plastered over like Fox News and all this stuff is that trying to basically defend Donald Trump for saying bomb when it is a bomb, and we know it's a bomb now, but how the left machine basically went up in arms saying, oh, you need to be careful, you got to come out with all the information first. And by the way, it's funny because Hillary Clinton actually said the word bomb and then was asked this question immediately after. She said about the New York bombing, and then a reporter asks her about the incident with Donald Trump and is trying to make up a controversy with this. Should he have waited until all the facts are out and stuff like that? And Hillary Clinton's like, yes, he should have waited until all the facts are out, even though she just said the word bombing. So this is one of the things, the left is spinning up their stuff, and Fox News is over there trying to defend this. These are the things I'm seeing. I was unplugged. I don't care about this election anymore because all I'm focusing on right now is foreign policy. I'm looking at what foreign actors are doing outside, because these are the things that will crash our economy before 2018. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, those are the foreign actors we need to worry about, in addition to acts of terror, which I believe the U.S. government is going to cause, essentially. Not that they're doing it, but their policy, the Obama administration policy of basically it's beehive politics, where you're basically shaking up a hornet's nest and throwing it at your opponent's feet. We're trying to destabilize the Syrian government because they won't sell our oil or sell their oil in U.S. dollars, and we need that petrodollar in order for this economy to survive. I'm looking at the huge game. We need the petrodollar because the petrodollar is a bubble. The U.S. bond market is a bubble. We've got so many bubbles, and if this economy crashes, that's it. That's the game over, folks. It's lights out, literally. And we'll get to some of that, and I have in the past. But my concern here is not about this election anymore. This is why I don't care. I feel like either way we go, it doesn't matter. So let's Mark, did you want to go into that? I wanted you to actually finish your thought on the abortion issue. Why we differ on that and how it's related to the last conversation. Go ahead.
It's just such a long discussion. But you're talking about how, I don't even know where to even start with this. I mean, I heard you talking about how we've had 50 million abortions since Roe v. Wade, and how there's so many people that, what if these people could have been born? And, what if we had the next MLK or the next Steve Jobs that was aborted? And how do we know that, any of these people who, they were unwanted pregnancies?
I made that argument after you made the next. Well, one second, Mark. I just want to clarify. I made that argument after you made the argument about Freakonomics is, crime rates have dropped, and they've been dropping in relation to how many abortions are being had, or something along those lines. That was a Freakonomics argument. And again, I argue, number one, how many good people have we aborted? Instead of how many criminals, how many good people? How many, Steve Jobs, as I said, how many scientists, how many Albert Einsteins, or people who would have found the cure for cancer or AIDS have we killed? How many
of them happen in a family where they're not wanted?
Okay, but
pretty
again,
rare.
there is no correlation. Just because there's a correlation with something, that does not mean that it's the cause of something. I also argue that gun ownership may cause the lowering crime rates.
If you're denying to bring in a bunch of people who are wanting to come into this country and who are basically saying, I want to be here, and they're already alive, and for the most part, they're law-abiding with the exception that they broke the law to come over the border. How do we know that one of them isn't going to be the next cure for cancer or the next Steve Jobs? Just because you're born in this country means that you're a citizen.
Well, I'll tell you how we have a pretty good
want to
indicator.
be this in this country.
I'll tell you how we have a pretty good indicator that we know that they're not going to be the next Steve Jobs, and we know that now their children may be. And again, I'm all for bringing somebody in, but we have a pretty good idea of knowing that illegal immigrants aren't going to be those people, because most of them, the vast majority of them, have low skill labor work. That's what they're doing right now. So when they're coming in,
and the vast majority of people who have been aborted were aborted by mothers who didn't want them. Actually, 100% of them were aborted by mothers who don't want their children.
Not if you were in China, by the way. But yeah, I get your point.
We're not talking about China. So all of those kids who were aborted were not interested. Their parents were not interested in having them. Either they didn't have two parents, or the mother was just so not interested in having a child that she wasn't going to raise a child under the circumstances that would be necessary in order to have a Steve Jobs or an MLK.
So again,
people are born to parents parents that are good.
The question you're making is that if they don't want to basically have the kid, then they should have a right to do with what their body and all that. But let me point out.
No, I'm just equating the idea that when you're saying, we should, this idea of having people, that these people who are here illegally don't necessarily have any value.
You cannot connect these issues. Immigration and abortion are different in that me saying that you should come here through the legal process, that does not equate to the same thing as murdering them. Let's say if we didn't want them here, we kill them instead of deport them. Yeah, that would probably be a lot cheaper, but that's not my policy. That's not what I want. I don't want to kill them. So the question in abortion is whether or not these fetuses, these babies, are they alive? And do you, if you don't want your child, do you have a right to kill it? Do you have a right if you don't want your dog to kill it? No, you don't. We don't have a right as a society.
Your dog is already born.
But born, does born mean that's where life begins? You and I, no, you and I.
As a matter of fact, in the first 3 months, the first 3 years, the brain is not even able to take care of itself.
So we should be able to kill them?
The body is. No,
if that's the standard, no. I'm just saying, if that's the standard.
Let's move on to foreign policy.
No, hold on. Let's focus on this for another few minutes here. But if that's a standard that the brain hasn't developed, so therefore we can kill a fetus. If the brain hasn't fully developed when it's born, why is that the standard? Then at that point, I guess we can kill them before the brain's fully developed. Before you're mature, you hit puberty, we can off you if your parents don't want you anymore. If that's the standard. What I'm talking about is where life begins, and this is why you can't connect immigration, because I'm not talking about murdering immigrants or illegals. I'm saying we send them out. We say if you came in the wrong way, we send you out. We enforce our laws so we don't incentivize more of you to come here legally.
I was just trying to make I was just trying to connect the dots. I was just trying to make a point here. Obviously, my point was not connected with you. So I'm just saying on this particular issue, it was a bad analogy, all right? I was just trying to analogize the idea of having people in this country who want to be here, but yet who have completely draconian and absolutely complex rules in order to get here or to stay here, shouldn't be forcefully removed from their homes unless they've committed a crime. And when your point about abortion, about how do we know who's going to be the next cure, or who's going to create the next cure for cancer? My belief that people who are, the unborn, who could potentially be born to a mother that doesn't want them, has about the same amount of chance, if not even a worse chance, than does somebody who's already been born, who's here, who's wanting to be here, who's working here, yet who didn't get here on the legal path.
This is another
and
example
obviously I'm
of how
not
an illegal...
creating the right
Go ahead, sorry.
argument with. I'm just not creating the right argument with, and I don't think this show is about abortion. I think this show is about
You're right.
foreign policy, and so that was my bad.
It's all right. Let's shift it back to the immigration though, because this is what this show is about. This is another example I'm noticing, and that it's. Again, I try to be consistent intellectually here, okay? And this is another example.
I don't, and that's the reason why you're ruining my game here.
I'm sorry. I'm pointing out why I think there are some holes in the libertarian philosophy. This is my warning to libertarians. Look, if you want an open border, you want this society, you don't want any immigration, and you try to your excuses for this is that in this case, your argument is that maybe these people who are coming here illegally will be the best and the brightest, but there are reasons why we want to control who comes here. Number one,
I didn't say they're going to be the best and the brightest. I mean, they're clearly not.
And we should go about finding the best and the brightest. Maybe their kids would be, but come on, let's make and we agree, make the process faster to come in. And I think we should be selective. I don't know if you do. Do you think we should say...
I do, yes, absolutely. We should be selective.
So we agree on that. Let's be faster. Let's be selective. And what about the whole Saudi Arabia thing? Should they get extra scrutiny?
Absolutely. If you come from a country that harbors terrorists, then you should absolutely have a lot more scrutiny. And I'm not even saying, like when it comes to, a lot of my super liberal friends who are all about the whole, refugee thing and going, let them all in and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I'm not against refugees. I'm not against letting refugees into this country. There are issues that allow, that create an environment that, necessitates refugees coming into this country. And then I'm all for it, sure. Absolutely. I'm not opposed to refugees.
It doesn't sound like, to me though, it doesn't sound like
you're talking about a country.
Sorry, I want to get this point. I want you to respond real fast. It seems to me like you're not being purist, ideological, leftist, libertarian. Again, this is where you and I have that divide. You're left-leaning, I'm right-leaning, and where I disagree on is this open border thing. From my understanding, the libertarians I've talked to are in favor of the kind of the open border that I'm talking about. I think you are leaning more conservative with me in this. So, do you disagree on that?
No, not necessarily. I don't. When you're talking about conservative, liberal, it's a label, but to me, it's common sense. I mean, you got to be smart about it, and it's like. To me, it's always that kind of NIMBY situation, not in my backyard. It's like, let all of these people in here, that are, from, terrorist states that we have created. I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, like I said, my point was, I'm not against, letting refugees into a country. What I am against is letting refugees into a country who are from a country that we've messed up quite a bit, or that we have a major problem with. Or that we've bombed, or that we've created some serious animosity in, that, like Syria, where there's going to naturally be some people who want to have something against us. And so when you can, you need to be selective about that. And it's pretty obvious when it comes to the, the media image, the humanitarian side of, that's so sweet, we just need to be, hold hands and sing Kumbaya, versus the idea of saying, let's be a little bit smart about our national security before we just start to let anybody and everybody into our country. So whether that's conservative or, just being logical and reasonable, I don't care about the label. What I'm saying is we need to have that as a matter of national security. We need to be scrutinous about who we let into this country. And I mean, that's pretty obvious, but we also need to have an easier path to get into this country, because there are a lot of people that might not necessarily be the engineers or the nurses of the world, but that can do and want to create a better life. And we are a nation of immigrants. So that's the fabric of this country, and that we are a better country because we have, in my opinion, open borders. We allow immigrants in, and we have more of a free trade society. I'm not saying anybody and everybody, and that's where I think you and I might disagree with the definition of open border.
Do you think? Because again, I think ideologically, I don't even think Gary Johnson is consistent with necessarily the complete finished utopian version or vision of open borders. I think he has some differences of opinion, but he's doing it throughout the governmental system. Like, for example, here, he was asked, should working illegal immigrants be given temporary amnesty? What do you think he said?
I think he probably did not use the word amnesty, but I think he probably agreed with that.
Okay. He says, yes, create a simple path to citizenship, which is amnesty. That's
okay. And then again, it's vernacular. It's just terminology. For
immigrants with no criminal record. And
there we go.
You agree with this, right?
Yeah, I do. I do agree with that. I think that's a better country, and it's the kind of country that I think would create the system of, it would create a situation where we would be, these people would be not only more favorable to not just one party, where I don't think we should be caring so much about that. We should be doing what's right and what's wrong. But it is the kind of thing that people who have come here, say they've gotten here illegally. I mean, I don't find that to be so much of a difference of somebody jumping over a border versus somebody jumping over a border and then having a child in this country.
So, okay.
I mean, what is...
Do you... first of all, I would contend, and I want to get to the next thing here on Gary Johnson, just to kind of pick this apart a little bit. I contend, and I get where you're coming from, you think that would be a better way as far as giving temporary amnesty and giving them a pathway to citizenship, which is amnesty, for immigrants with no criminal record. I contend that they...
I think it's simpler, I think it's smarter, I think it's cheaper, and I think it's more humane.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
And I argue that citizens of this country should not be treated worse than people who are here legally. Every single person who is here illegally actually does have a criminal record. They're a illegal immigrant. They have violated our federal law.
That's fair. But when you're saying people here who are legal citizens, natural born or immigrants, how are they treated more unfairly if you're talking about evading taxes or if you're talking about a drug war, if you're talking about any of that stuff? You're not going to get an argument from me that that's messed up from the government to begin with.
Yeah. So, I mean, regardless, I don't want people to go to jail for nonviolent crimes. I think, if we are going to have a mandatory taxation system, again, I've talked about my proposal with that briefly, but...
voluntary, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just saying
that's going to work out.
No, I'm
sure everybody will participate in that one.
I'm sure you would if you want those policies, and if it's a good policy, it shouldn't require force. If it's a good idea, good ideas don't require you to force people to do them. So I think that the free market will fill a lot of these voids that people just won't pay for. Technology.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that situation, though. I mean, I think even in my most of my libertarian friends, like, you have to have a police force. You have to have fire and medical.
So you have
to have a national defense.
As a libertarian,
if everybody just thinks that's a silly idea, it's irrelevant. I think if most people disagree with that and that they wouldn't just voluntarily participate in it. You have to force people to pay for something.
Are you telling? Because again, I think that the only way that people can be free is if they are informed. And right now we are the furthest thing from an informed society. But my point is that we can be free and informed, and if informed people are making the decision of whether or not they want to close their police department, I doubt that most reasonable informed people would not donate something to that. I know I would.
That's the reason why all politics should be local. The more local control, the better. The majority of my libertarian friends, and I'm assuming yours, and the majority of my liberal friends, and the majority of my conservative friends, are not anarchists. In fact, I don't know many anarchists whatsoever. So we believe that we should have some kind of government. Government implies force in the fact that you have to force people to pay for some of these programs in order to have them. And you have to force it out of the hands of people in a particular way.
Why can't it be voluntarily given? Would you, as a libertarian, as a reasonable person, would you donate for your police and the United States military every tax day?
If I were never taxed otherwise, then yes.
Yeah, this is the point. We could do that if we show people why they need the things. Again, bad ideas don't require force. I think that the government is a better way to go about providing with the military. I like the idea of state militias. Keep that local, keep that strong. Each state would have their own basic national defense within the borders, but also federalize like the Navy and the Air Force, and maybe have some limited army if we need to deploy somewhere to control a strategic area or protect some allies or something along those lines. That's a great idea. Do that, but I agree with the libertarians in that we don't need to have a huge military projecting force and imposing U.S. hegemony. Which again, I argue we only do that because we need the U.S. dollar. We need to have global stability because we're dependent on foreign oil and things like that. We're not energy independent. But these are the. I think that if we fix those issues that I'm talking about, our dependency on foreign oil, have a country that we're enforcing all of our laws equally across the board. Doesn't matter who you are, and as far as this voluntarily paying your taxes, I think that would be a way. And I think most reasonable people who are informed about about the issues, who even if you're not taxed in any other area and you're being asked to donate for a bunch of different areas on your tax return, you just check where do you want your money to go, kind of deal, and you deposit your money in. I think most reasonable people would be like, yeah, you know what, I kind of want to keep my my post office. Maybe they wouldn't. Kind of want to keep my my police department. Kind of want to keep my military defending me.
And that's the essence of a democracy, though. I mean, we elect people in order to make those types of decisions, and that's the reason why a local government is better, because you elect the people at a local level. They make those particular decisions when it comes to a budget, because generally speaking, they're more inclined, they're more interested, they're more educated on those subjects than is the average populace. I'm not saying that's all the time.
It would be a further check and balance, though. It would be one more.
Sure.
One more.
But
like
look at Milton Friedman, who I actually happen to agree with almost on every issue. But his proposal, and Reagan implemented this, which was the payroll deducted tax. Instead, it used to just be taxed at the very end of the year, or people would have to send in a check. But he realized, and Reagan realized that, if you just did this on a payroll deduction, then it would have been a lot easier, and it would have been a lot faster, and it is. And, now people just don't even care because it's just automatically taken out of their accounts. Would you elect to change that back? Would you say?
I don't. I'm not a fan. If I had a magic wand and I could wave that magic wand, I would fix all the reasons why we're projecting our force abroad and why our largest export is our military might, our U.S. dollar. That would be one of the biggest things I would do. I would wave that wand and free up all the regulations holding back our economy. That would be the first thing I would do. I would try to get rid of all the honestly, in my utopian dream, I would make this a voluntary thing, localize a lot of this stuff, and let the taxpayers be the final say on whether or not a program gets enforced or not. I understand that's a little bit idealistic. So what I'm saying, my realistic thing is right now is, again, we have the best government ever. I don't like this idea of taxation. I'm willing to thumb my nose at this for a moment and bite my tongue on this and just kind of, okay, we'll continue the forced taxation thing. Let's get this other stuff under control, and also we do have to try to inform our populace, because we have a really uneducated population right now, and I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Speaking about Donald Trump, look at that. God, I can't even believe
Donald Trump
unbelievably idiotic people who are supporting that guy.
Your guy from that one show you were telling me about. What's that dude's name? Can't remember. Very famous lefty guy.
The guy from that one show. I don't know.
We were off the air. You've been telling me to check out his program. He does those segments. Bill Maher. There we go. He made a quote, and I thought it was awesome. He says, Donald Trump did not create the cesspool. He just rose from it.
Yeah, the swamp. He didn't create the swamp. He just rose from the swamp. Exactly. And that's the kind of situation. I mean, I saw a meme that said, Donald Trump is not is not what's wrong with this country. He's an indictment of the country. In other words, this, we've asked, we got what we've been looking for, and that's the sad part of it is that I'm almost ashamed of my country for this kind of choice that we have in this, where you've got a career politician who just lies in order to get elected, say whatever it is that's on her mind in order to basically do whatever she can in order to rise to power. And then you've got a man who's just a total con artist who is the biggest threat, like I said, not only to our civil liberties, but to our foreign policy, to our national security. And yet simply by virtue of him not being Hillary Clinton, you have a majority of Republicans not only endorsing this laughing stock and this disgrace of a human being, but you have them supporting him. And these people who are all behind him, you have to apologize for all of his mistakes, and then yet who continue to go ahead and support him. We are in a major problem. Yeah. We're in a catastrophe waiting to happen. And that's why I'm saying when you say you don't care about this election,
it doesn't matter either way.
I know you do care, Mac. It's just that I think you don't feel as though you have any power.
There is no more good choices. We have hit the point where we have hit no more good options.
I disagree. That's the reason why I'm saying I'm almost disappointed in you. That being such a purist, you're saying oh gosh, you can't stand Gary Johnson. You picked on Gary Johnson more in this particular show than you have either of the other two candidates. And this is way better of a choice. And I'm not saying he's perfect.
We're just getting started, man. but
we only have an hour 40 left.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Look, the only reason why I did is because you're on the show and you're supporting him, and you're giving me reasons why. I'm just telling you why I did hang my hopes on him. I was hoping that would work. Again, I never said I was going to vote for Gary Johnson. I'm not. I know I'm not now. I'm not going to vote.
Well, you should.
Well, I'm not going to, and it's okay.
Do it.
Because it doesn't matter in my state anyway. He's not going to win. He couldn't even make it to the debates, which I want to talk about in a second. But he couldn't make it to the debates. He's not a purist.
That's because of the corrupt political system that we have, and that's the reason why I'm saying is that the more people who vote for a third-party option that's actually viable, the more that you have that kind of a voice that's given to these people the next time.
Agreed.
And maybe the next time
is
a candidate you agree with more.
This is legitimate. If we do this, we legitimize what the Libertarian Party is doing and not putting up a Libertarian candidate. Somebody who's talking about the PPP, again, global government. I've made that case over and over and over again. Mandatory vaccinations, can't do it, violates a non-aggression principle, and carbon fees, anti-free market. I'm sorry. Look, I don't want to legitimize. My entire reason for voting for Gary Johnson was to say, well, at least I can still be principled over here. And maybe the rest of the country will do the right thing too. But now, not only will he not make it into debates, there's no way he's going to win, but secondly, he's not even libertarian. And the stuff he's arguing here, again, those three things. He's not free market with carbon taxes. He's violates the non-aggression principle with mandatory vaccinations, and he's talking about centralizing more power in the hands of global bureaucracies with the TPP. These are core issues. It's not like this is just like a little tiny fractional thing. And if I wanted to, if I want to play that political game right now, if I wanted to say, okay, well, I'm just going to, do a protest vote or something, or try to play, rather than protest vote, try to play politics and make my vote really count, maybe I would vote for Hillary because I think Donald Trump would be the absolute worst option because he's going to destroy the economy, absolutely. He's going to probably throw us into a World War III scenario, and both of those I think are more highly likely than not. In addition
did you see his speech? I mean, I don't know who it was to, but it was actually somewhat of an eloquent speech because he was able to read it from a teleprompter. But it was the idea that, I mean, these types of things where you're like, this is the greatest economic package ever in history. Where he's basically talking about a total isolationist economy. He's talking about, imposing tariffs, and he's talking about ending NAFTA, and he's talking about, just reversing all of the types of progress that I believe that we've made. And now, granted, it is not perfect, and there is nothing perfect about major legislation when you're dealing with something like NAFTA. When we deal with Bush Sr., who was a pretty damn smart guy, and Bill Clinton, who was a pretty damn smart guy, granted, you might not agree with any of, either of their sides or some of their sides, but the idea is both of those presidents were pretty damn smart, and both of them were adamantly for NAFTA. And when you're looking at, the benefits it does now, granted, there are some major negatives
I'm less
to
concerned
it.
about so the two economic policies I worry about him is his idea to default on the loans. Again, that destabilizes the U.S. dollar, which again threatens our control over the
congressional
petrol.
approval, does it not? I don't think Congress would ever do something.
Oh,
like that.
okay. I
you
agree.
can't executive order a default. I don't know for
agree.
sure.
Yeah,
but
I agree. I don't think that the president can do that. But although I think that might actually be Federal Reserve. I don't know this. But what I will tell you is that let's say if it is Congress or whoever, I don't think Donald Trump is above trying to use the bully pulpit to pressure somebody into it. And I know the spineless, feckless little Republicans we have in Congress will do nothing to oppose a Republican president like Donald Trump.
Oh, God, they're just the worst. And I can't even say that with a straight face, considering the fact that we have a Democratic Congress. But the Republicans are even worse than the Democrats in Congress, to most degrees. I mean, I've never seen a Congress just try to destroy their president as much as this Congress has with Obama. I mean, at least
right,
the Democrats.
Hold on. We got a laser in here. We got to focus, man, because we got a lot of show.
You got to focus on the situation. Let's go.
Okay, so the reason why Trump is going to also be another problem is because Trump is going to destroy, and I think he already is destroying the conservative movement right now. We have an opposition force against Obama. You're even talking about how we have been doing things against that, and I'm actually kind of surprised right now. The one thing I will give this Congress credit to is the fact that they are actually opposing the Supreme Court nomination still for the Obama administration. I'm really surprised they haven't broke on that. But
it's horrible, though. That's their job to do this.
That's not. They don't have to do that. Okay,
I think they should.
Maybe you think so, but the Constitution doesn't say they have to do it. They have the power to, but they don't have to. They could wait, and they can wait as long as necessary. There's nothing in the Constitution.
But it's just messed up, and it's honestly, do you really think that Donald Trump? I mean, the candidate. I can't even remember the guy's name. He actually wasn't that bad. He was pretty moderate. But he was better than anybody Hillary would nominate, and he's definitely better than anybody Trump would nominate.
Exactly. Trump is a progressive, and this is where I'm coming at with this. Nobody's going to stop.
Trump is a regressive. Go ahead.
He's pro big government, but not for nationalization and centralizing outside of the states. He's for it inside the states, closing off the borders, which is equally scary. Again, a police state is not something I'm a fan of. I'm not for building the wall. Again, I think we should take measures to make our country safer, but none of them have to do with making us more isolated. I think we should market ourselves to people out there, bring in immigrants that we need, and really control who is coming in and out of our country. And I don't think we necessarily have to do that through a wall. I think we can do that through self-incentives, self-deportations, and enforcing our law. If you start deporting people are going to stop coming here. And if you make it harder for people to get a job here, who are here illegally, they're just going to leave. If there's no work, they can't stay, they'll leave. This is how...
You're right. And I'd like to take a little side note when it comes to this, just because I got a little breath of inspiration from some of the things that you had said to me earlier today, especially about Ronald Reagan. And when, you see this kind of a president where, from 1913, when we implemented the Federal Reserve Act and the National Income Tax, through FDR, where the top tax bracket was at 93%. I mean, people being taxed at 93% if you made over a certain amount in that marginal tax bracket, all the way through the mega amounts of regulation and red tape, and just tons of problems and loopholes and bureaucracy that one had to jump through in order to succeed in this country. And you were talking about this when it comes to manufacturing earlier today, and this is absolutely correct. When we were talking about Reaganomics, and not just you and I, but when you just talked about it on a national scale, people talk about how trickle-down economics never works, it never did, and blah, blah, blah. And I just think these people are absolutely full of it. When you look at Ronald Reagan and the impact that his economic policies made, when he decreased the size of government, and then he decreased the tax burden from something like in the 90s all the way down to 28%. I'm pretty sure that was what his top tax bracket was. 28, 25, it was in the high 20s, I believe. The economy exploded. The amount of growth that we had and the amount of improvisation and entrepreneurial and the amount of invention invention and innovation that was sparked in this country simply because of the fact that people were allowed to be free was unprecedented. And I mean, it's, at least since the late 1800s, where you were having, the advent of the steam engine and electricity and all of those kinds of things, like the light bulb. I mean, the idea here is that when you are allowing people to become more free, they will spark innovation. They will create new things. And that's exactly what I think you were alluding to when you're talking about not only manufacturing, but when you're talking about bringing in a new system of government, and when you're looking at the new level of commerce. We have such an ability to get people to a higher level of prosperity if you just get government out of the scenario. And if you get out of people's way, and it's that adage that the government that governs best is the one that governs least, that's the situation that Reagan, and when you look at his predecessors, George H.W. Bush, granted, read my lips, no new taxes. He raised him, but he raised them a little bit. Clinton raised him, but he raised them a little bit. George W. Bush lowered them, and you saw between 2002 and 2007 a massive explosion of growth. You also saw during Clinton's administration, because of the internet, and that was because of all of the internet commerce was because of the prior administration keeping government out of people's business. So if we're really looking at an educational segment, and you're really looking at the best and the most influential and the most effective president, Reagan has got to be the guy that we look at when it comes to the only one who has ever decreased the size of government. When, with the exception of Eisenhower. Eisenhower actually lowered the military budget, which was pretty revolutionary. But Reagan was increased the military budget by a sizable amount, which kind of defeated his idea of being a lower government or a smaller government Republican. But it was for the absolute purpose of defeating communism, which the Berlin Wall fell,
Agreed.
And we saw a tremendous amount of growth over in Eastern Europe because of something like that. So I just want to go ahead and say this to you and to your viewers. You're absolutely 100% correct, Matt, when you're talking about the idea that manufacturing, innovation, all of the types of things that we're looking for are all based on the lowering of regulation and the lowering of tax, because the freer we are, the better we are.
And you know what? The entire we could get out of the debt that we're in. We could fix all of the problems that we have. We don't have to rush off this cliff, folks. This is my point, is that, and this is why this election, it does not matter to me. Now, maybe people are, again, there will be a difference, and no matter who gets elected, it's going to be a different scenario. But we could get past our issues. We could fix our economy. We don't have to crash. We don't have to have the global economy break up the Western world as we know it and start a global Greater Depression. We don't have to go through this stuff if we stop letting the government put their boot on our throat. The measure of freedom in a society is how many times the government steps in between you and what you want to do and says no. That's how free you are. If your government says no more than my government, I have a freer society. So this is what we're trying to protect.
Mine's bigger than yours.
So this is what we're trying to protect. And I just, with Donald Trump, the reason, again, I respect my friends.
Speaking of bigger or less, just kidding.
I respect my friends.
He's got small hands, dude.
He does. He does have some. There's like little baby.
Speaking
hands.
of, do you know what they say about big hands and big feet?
What's that?
Two out of three ain't bad. Go ahead.
Oh, that was good. That was really good. Oh man. Okay, so Trump will cause problems again by nationalizing. He wants to nationalize the banks, basically create a bigger problem. He's already said that, defaulting on loan, tariffs. Again, that is a high tax on you policy. Tariffs. It will put companies out of business here in America that sell Chinese, Japanese, Mexican-made products. It will put them out of business, and it will cost you 35 to 45% more for those products. That's high tax policy. So Donald Trump will destroy the economy, but the issue with Donald Trump that I have a problem with the most, if it was just a binary choice of, okay, not Hillary, I can respect my Republican friends who do that. I understand that choice. You don't want Hillary, you're voting for Donald Trump. I get it. I don't want Hillary either. But the problem is is that by voting for Donald Trump, there will be no opposition to him. I'm already watching people like Sean Hannity right now say, yep, free daycare for women, that's a great idea, Trump. I'm really happy that you decided to go with this, even though I've been against this kind of crap my entire life. Hey, everybody, yeah, Donald Trump is right about tariffs, and let me tell you why. Because it's really free market. Let me explain how restricting the free market is actually free market. People that have been in this ideological world and realm reporting this kind of stuff for their entire career are now, yep, Donald Trump, everything you say is right. Yes, sir. I love the fact that you're going to, create tariffs and make Americans pay, tons more. And I love the fact that you're giving, compliments to Vladimir Putin. I love this crap. This is all good. Nothing can be done wrong. And this is kind of the society that we have now. Again, Donald Trump didn't create this cesspool. He just rose out of it. We have an uninformed population, and we're past the point of where one man can fix this problem anyway. And people are, instead of informing themselves on the issue, they're putting all their hope and trust in somebody who's just pandering to you. That's really it. And it's evidence that he doesn't mean what he says every time he flip-flops on this issue and goes back, because at his core, all Donald Trump is a progressive. He's been a progressive all his life. His only difference is that he's tough on trade, and he doesn't understand that all these policies he's advocating for have been tried, tested, and failed. It's because he's not knowledgeable on Keynesian economics, which is what he's promoting. He's not knowledgeable on this stuff, but his idea is that, hey, I'm a good manager. I can manage it better than anyone. And for anybody who's a free market activist can tell you that one of the reasons why we believe that the market should be free is because it's too damn complicated for any one person to manage. It's impossible. You'll always have a slower delay. You'll always make bad decisions. You'll always end up having things where you're trying to protect a bubble, and that's not how you do. When you protect a bubble, it makes a problem worse, and the bubble ends up crashing anyway. This has been tried and tested, and Donald Trump will continue to do this. Donald Trump will act like a Marxist because that's what this ideology is, of thinking that they're smarter than other people out there and can force people to do things against their will and act against their own incentive. So this whole problem with Donald Trump is that he destroys the conservative momentum that we have currently against the Obama administration. We've been able to...
Yeah, he destroyed the whole birther movement when he just said clearly that Obama was born in the United States.
Well,
he just killed it.
Yeah, well,
I'm kidding. Sorry, that was.
He has been saying for a long time that Obama was a Kenyan, and
so bad.
Yeah,
and and that's the thing is that all these Fox News watchers were like, yeah, he's this Islamist, he's this, like Kenyan who was born. It's like, you guys, let it go, seriously.
Well, did you know that the Hillary Clinton campaign started that rumor? Did you know that?
Of course they did.
Yeah,
of course. No,
legitimately they did. They started that rumor when she was running against Obama. That was basically one of their criticizements of him, is that he's not really an American. He wasn't born in America. He hasn't lived in America. So do you really want to have your president, your representative for the Democratic Party?
Bring that. Show me that, because every single thing that I'll seen send it to you.
I'll post it on our social media tonight.
But I don't care. I hate Hillary Clinton anyway. So
anyway, doesn't matter. But point being, Donald Trump is breaking down our own opposition forces. And if we've barely been able to hold on with the Obama administration unified against something, because we're good at unifying against something. That's all we're good at, because we don't understand our principles anymore. And Donald Trump is not going to have that same buffer. And he's calling for many of the same, but different. Instead of globalist, it's nationalist, and it's isolationist, really, when you're tough on trade like he's trying to be. So if I was, again, and you already know where I stand on Hillary, absolutely opposed to almost all of her policies. Gosh, I can't even think of one thing that I agree with her on. But
didn't you say you wanted to sleep with her, though?
No, I said she looks like she's asleep during that speech. I thought she was fainting. I can understand how you got confused, though.
But just like when somebody said, I wouldn't have sex with you with her penis.
Okay, here we go. Donald Trump, Gary Johnson, Hillary Clinton. You got to screw one, marry one, kill one. Go.
Well, only if Hillary's screwing me.
Oh, gross.
I mean, you know how big a ball she's got. Let me just tell you. You know, like what did they say? Something like, you know, she the reason why she doesn't wear miniskirts in Washington D.C. is because she doesn't want to get her. She doesn't want her balls to get freezing. Anyway, so you've got, who do I want to marry? Who do I want to kill? And who do I want to what? Screw?
Yeah, you got to screw one, kill one, marry one.
I screw Donald Trump just to inflict him pain with my huge endowment.
Oh man!
I would marry Gary Johnson only because now I can. No, yeah, and then I don't know. I guess I want to kill Donald Trump. I'm going to kill Donald Trump. I haven't had sex with I've been fish-free since 2003, so I guess I'd probably sleep with Hillary just to say that I've had sex with a woman in the past decade. And then I'd say I would marry Gary Johnson just so that I could be the first lady.
Okay.
Would that be, yeah.
There we go. All right. That's funny. All right. Well, let's see if I.
What about you? Who do? Yeah.
Okay.
Who'd you bang, Carrie, and Mel?
Well, if I'm playing this game, it'd have to be bang Hillary, marry Donald. No prenup, Donald. Sorry, I'm gonna get some of that money. And and sorry, Gary. I apologize.
You kill Gary?
You will be missed, Gary. You'll be missed.
You kill Gary? No, maybe that would keep the movement going. Just because he'd be a martyr.
He'd be a martyr for the cause. Oh gosh.
Look,
Secret
dude,
Service, please. This is a joke. We are joking. This is just for this little bit. I don't want to end up getting followed.
You can't swing on my side just a little bit to say that you'd sleep with Gary Johnson just so that you couldn't kill Hillary or Donald. Come on now.
This is okay. I just realized I started to get nervous about the kill part now. I take
experiment a little bit with.
Let's change that to slap one. How about that? Because I don't want Secret Service.
God, seriously, nobody's gonna come on.
I don't want them coming for me.
They're not coming for you, man. Seriously, yeah. You're not Edward Snowden here.
So I'd sleep with Hillary. I'd marry Donald, and I'd slap Gary Johnson. There we go.
You have it on record, everybody. Mack Worley would sleep with Hillary Clinton. Okay, go ahead.
Dun, dun. All right, so we're going to cut to a commercial break, Dan. I called you Dan. Mark, we're going to cut to a commercial break. And
why don't you just slap me?
Yeah, sorry. I apologize.
Just didn't, man.
So when we come back, the next hour and a half, we're going to be deep inside these featured topics. I want to start talking about Russian threats,
deep.
Iranian threats, China, and North Korea. You guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.
Oh, yeah.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Tasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
And we're back. I want to focus on, for the next half hour, Russian security threats. Why do they pose a security problem to the U.S. national interest? And particularly, I want to focus on how they're making claims, first of all, and rightly so, I will add, about how the U.S. is helping ISIS by bombing the Syrian government forces. I'm going to tell you what you need to know about that. Why it's something you should be concerned about the cyber hacking coming from Russia on U.S. servers and some of our other things I want to talk about with this. So I want to talk and focus on their hacking capability. And I also want to find out why is Russia using Syrian refugee crisis as a weapon, and how are they using it as a weapon? So that's where we're going to focus right now. So, Mark, let me first start with you. What kind of threat level would you perceive Russia, and what do you think are some of the geopolitical interests that Russia is trying to do? What are their goals?
Okay, one, to embarrass the United States. Two, actually, no, number one is to build the Soviet bloc back up again. I think Putin has been very clear in his attempts to do so. I think he's a maniac. I don't trust him as far as I could throw him, and he is a complete D-bag. I mean, but I happen to believe that his aggression towards the United States is more fervent because we have a black president. I think the Russian culture is very racist. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I hate to even be so generalistic, but when you're dealing with Russian culture, I think that they are very, very racist, very homophobic, and quite sexist. So, I mean, it is one of the most, I would never go there as a gay man. I mean, that's the kind of country that I just look at and say is absolutely a horrible country in the way that they treat their gays and lesbians, the way that women are treated, they're second-class citizens, and blacks are. I mean, they're extremely racist towards blacks. So
complete police state. He's executing his political opposition literally in the streets in front of the Kremlin on video. Okay, go on.
I think even and that's the thing is that I think he is just disgusted with the fact that he has to deal with a superpower that's led by a black man. I mean, and I think that's one of the major reasons why he's so pro-Trump. I mean, and we talked about this offline that and I agree with you. Trump is Trump is an easy target for Putin because you can bat him, you can beat him up, Trump is so anti-American, and Putin is such. But I do think Putin's a very
hold on. That makes it sound like that's what I didn't quite make that point. I want to clarify the point there that you said.
No, we were talking on offline, so yeah. I'll take all the responsibility.
Okay.
I don't want to do it.
I just want to point out that what I said about Putin in terms of Donald Trump, why he may be favoring Donald Trump in this election, is that I think Donald Trump will be, first of all, the chaos candidate. And I agree with you that Russia wants to create chaos in America. So obviously getting the chaos candidate elected is in favor of Russian interests because they want to take us down while bringing themselves up. The more we're weak, the more they can expand, and there's less opposition to them. So they can.
Yeah, and I think Hillary Clinton is the kind of also because I think the guy's a pretty sexist jerk, is that he doesn't want to be dealing with Hillary Clinton, and so I don't know what his relationship with what's her name, Merkel?
Angela Merkel.
Angela, yeah, sorry. But I'm pretty sure the guy is just. I mean, Putin is just a caricature of himself. He's just a jerk. He's somebody that I don't understand. Even with the election that's coming up, why Russians even like him. But he's dangerous. He's a very dangerous individual, and I think that when you're dealing with the situations with Iran, who are basically testing us, in the waters.
Do you think that Russia? Do you think that Putin is a smart guy? Do you think he's conniving and he's playing the long game here, or do you think he's got short-sighted interest in mind here?
I would say both. I mean, he's kind of a CEO. He's looking at the short-term situation, but his handling of the economy has really hurt his people. I mean, oil is their biggest export. I mean, their oil is the biggest industry, and with oil being cheap the way that it is, it's hurt their economy significantly. He's had a lot to answer for during his tenure, and he hasn't necessarily been a very good domestic guy. So I think he's looking on foreign policy to try to exercise his might so that people can kind of look, beyond the idea that he's been I don't want to say a failure. I mean, the man is brilliant. He is a really smart politician. I don't think anybody can deny that. But I wouldn't call him a great leader like Donald Trump would.
Yeah.
And so any of your fans on here who are Trump supporters, just keep in mind, this man has called Vladimir Putin a good leader and somebody who is, and then when he's put to the test, he's saying, oh, well, when compared to, Obama. Well, if you're a racist D-bag, then of course you're going to, not like Barack Obama in comparison to Vladimir Putin, but I don't know anybody in this world who would rather have Vladimir Putin as their leader than Barack Obama. Come on now. I'm not saying Barack Obama is the end-all, be-all of all great presidents or anything like that, but come on, you can't actually think that a dictator like Putin is, remotely good.
Yeah,
and so,
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what was the question again? Sorry.
You got off on a tangent. It's cool. Basically, my interpretation of him, and I put myself into these people's shoes. I'm trying to figure out who they are and what their interests are, and then look at those things to try to figure out why they're doing what they're doing. Would you think that's a pretty good way to look at foreign policy?
For sure. I mean, like I said, I think just to wrap it up, that Putin really wants to exercise more control. I mean, the Crimea, the Ukraine thing, the idea of NATO, Ukraine joining NATO is a big end game for him. I mean, this is the kind of guy who is, really about power and who wants to restore the Soviet Union, number one. Number two, I think he has such a vendetta against the United States and he wants to embarrass us. And I think that, just by virtue of a Trump presidency, that's the biggest embarrassment in our country's history, in my opinion.
Okay, so two questions. First one, I just kind of want a little explanation here on why you think he has a vendetta against the United States. What is the reason for that?
Because we were the cause of the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Okay, and
not. I don't think like the only cause. Look, I'm not giving us that much credit, but I do believe that Reagan's policies and the massive spending, outspending of Russia caused them to go under and caused the Soviet Union to fall and caused the Berlin Wall to fall.
Agreed. We agree on this. So the vendetta against the United States, I would argue, stems from the hegemonic control that since the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO and the United States have basically created this bulwark against Russian aggression. Would you agree with that also being a reason why he's our ideological opponent? I mean, he's sure,
and you need a common enemy. And in addition to that, I mean, when you were one of the two world superpowers, and then you were reduced to almost anonymity, you have to blame it on somebody. And I think you have to blame it on the United States if you're in Russia.
Agreed.
I mean, it's not like you're going to blame it on the Pope. You're not going to blame it on Margaret Thatcher. I mean, those people are insignificant in comparison. You've got to look at the United States as the fall of the Soviet Union.
Agreed. There was, like you said, there's some other factors like their involvement in Afghanistan, and Osama bin Laden played a role in that as well, getting them to commit their forces into a quagmire such as the Middle East. This is the graveyard for empires. Is a reason why they call it that. So, but
Afghanistan,
yes, yeah. So there's a real reason for this vendetta, and it's that we have a hegemonic power, and I've been explaining this to the audience, and if you're out there, that this is a real big principle that you have to understand. Hegemony. We are trying to use our military might. We're exporting military might around the world to secure people in NATO countries in order to keep back Russian aggression, because Russia will expand. That's why they're one of these bad players on the block. And their idea is that they need to weaken the United States and strengthen themselves. And Donald Trump, in this instance that we were talking about, he's talking about pulling out of NATO. And though I don't necessarily think we should be allied with Saudi Arabia and Turkey and the folks like that, but I do think that if we're going to pull out of these things, we need to talk about energy independence and getting rid of the regulations here. And I keep coming back to this because, again, that's the reason why we have a force projected abroad. That's the reason why we have such a big military. That's the reason why we care what's going on in Syria. That's why we care about what's going on in Iraq. That's why we care about what's going on in Libya. That's why we care, because they produce our oil that we're addicted to and we can't produce ourselves. So,
Matt, when you have a big anything, it's never a good idea to pull out. Let's just say that.
Gay. No, I'm just kidding.
So gay.
Oh man. Okay. So, let's see. All right. So back to Putin. All right. So far, it seems like you and I typically agree, right, on Putin?
I don't think we disagree on much.
Okay. Cool. So with this, let's talk about some of the actual threats that they pose. Let's talk about real and verifiable things. So, first of all, there is a claim right now from the Russians saying that we are directly helping ISIS. So, first of all, let me play. This is
Obama's the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS. And you know who the co-founder is?
Hillary.
Crooked Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
God,
so,
you guys, if you are actually voting for this guy, oh my God.
Oh no! Don't talk down to them, man. We're going to need them after this election. We need them.
They're deplorable.
No, stop it. we're going. Look, I do not look down on anyone voting for Donald Trump. I understand your rationale. If you think she's better than Hillary, we just disagree on a potential that. Again, I think he's going to continue to grow the government. I don't think that we can do that anymore. I think the economy is at the breaking point here. We're already in a recession. I've covered economic episodes in the past. We have a housing bubble. We got a stock market bubble. We got a bond bubble, which is the super bubble. It's the bubble of all bubbles. We have to continue to have a strong U.S. dollar, meaning our currency itself is a bubble, and if it pops, we lose the petrodollar, and now we're not able to pay for this military export that we're pumping out. That's our biggest export is military might. And then the second one is debt. We're not able to go further to debt because we lose our credit rating. We lose the world reserve currency. We lose the petrodollar. We're talking about a greater global depression that scatters across the Western world, putting us in a place where we've never been because all of these Western societies are so dependent on electricity. And without wages coming in, we had this conversation today offline, Mark. Without wages coming in, if your dollars are devaluing to the point where it's like in Venezuela, where you sit down for a meal, and by the time you're done with that meal, the price has changed. You know, you got to carry around a wheelbarrow.
Better be a damn good meal.
You got to carry a wheelbarrow full of money to pay for things over there. If we're in this point and you go work for let's say the power plant, you're going to work for the power plant, but you can't buy anything with the paycheck you're getting anymore because that money's worthless. You're not even going to have electricity, folks. There will be no one showing up to work. The economy will fall apart. There's not going to be any jobs because there won't be any currencies. We'll be down to a barter system until something else picks up. And I worry about that because the Department of Homeland Security says without electricity, with an EMP attack, 60% of the U.S. population will be dead within 6 months after an EMP attack. So,
you know, Matt, do you want your viewers or your listeners to become cutters? You know, like people who like actually cut their legs and like their wrists and that kind of. Like, why are we doing like this is so depressing right
now. You have to know. You have to see. Look directly into the darkness and know what's coming, folks. I'm telling you, don't listen to me at your own risk. That's all I'm saying. Right now, I'm the squirrel hoarding the nuts, and I'm telling you, don't be the grasshopper, okay? Don't be that guy, okay?
Sounds naughty.
Terrible. All right, so with Russia, they are now saying that we're airstriking intentionally the Syrian government in order to help ISIS. Here's the clip I'm going to go ahead and play for you. You can hear from their ambassador saying this himself. Here we go.
I wonder if you could clarify something for us, because there was a statement from the spokeswoman for your foreign minister in Moscow floating the idea that the US was colluding directly with ISIL. Do you believe that to be the case?
Well, you know, of course, this is an extreme case scenario. I suppose this scenario is subjected by the fact that at times one had the impression that the United States is trying to protect neutral on the ground. Colluding, well, we don't have specific evidence, but delivering airstrikes, and quite effective airstrikes. 60 people dead, 100 people injured. Against those who are fighting Nusra, one wonders. Not Nusra, but ISIL.
Killed people by mistake as well, including a lot of civilians.
I've explained in some detail why it is very strange to believe that has been an accidental thing. The timing, and other aspects of the situation indicate that it may well be a provocation. But let's see what the next move is going to be from Washington. If they go about blaming Russia for everything, including this airstrike, then I'm afraid their intentions will become extremely clear.
So apparently we have bombed a Syrian government outpost, basically, where they had some troops and they were standing there opposing ISIS. And again, I argue that we are trying to basically topple Assad because he will not sell oil in U.S. dollars, which threatens the security of the U.S. petrodollar. We saw this when we went into Iraq. I argue that's one of the main reasons why we went in. Weapons of mass destruction was the excuse, and I argue Saddam probably had them, and I think they probably went to Syria, which is how we saw chemical weapons being used there, but I digress. But we went into Iraq because he stopped selling his oil in U.S. dollars, and then we overthrew Gaddafi in Libya because he was trying to set up his own currency backed by gold, and he would sell his oil in something other than U.S. dollars as well. Every despot that goes around and says that they're going to sell money somewhere else or sell oil in something other than the U.S. dollar, we topple. We get rid of them because that is an economic problem for us. So in this case, I think that we are, in fact, actually trying to help ISIS. And, this is what, again, Russia doesn't have any high ground to stand on, but this is what's concerning. And here's Samantha Power, the UN I think diplomat. She's talking about this as a stunt, basically. She's saying that what Russia's saying is wrong.
We are still gathering information at this time, but we have been able to confirm that earlier today the United States struck what we believe to be an ISIL target. We halted the attack when we were informed by Russia that it was possible that we were striking Syrian regime military personnel and vehicles. We are investigating the incident. If we determine that we did indeed strike Syrian military personnel, that was not our intention. And we, of course, regret the loss of life. This said, even by Russia's standards, tonight's stunt, a stunt replete with moralism and grandstanding, is uniquely cynical and hypocritical. Because of a single airstrike, a strike that, if it struck regime forces, did so in error, a strike that we have swiftly acknowledged and committed to investigating, again, none of which the Assad regime or Russia have done in their airstrikes on innocent civilians. Now, of all times, Russia calls the entire UN Security Council to convene urgently so that it can stand up here and express outrage. And so why are we having this meeting tonight? It's a diversion from what is happening on the ground in Syria. When you don't like the facts, try to create attention somewhere else. It's the classic magician's sleight of hand.
And it's so funny that they mention that, because that's exactly what they're doing here. Again, the U.S. government has trained ISIS. They have funded them, and they've provided them with arms, not just through airdrops in Syria by claiming that they're arming up these moderate rebels who, again, one man's moderate rebel is another jihadi terrorist. So these guys are the bad guys. We're arming ISIS. We're training them in Jordan and CIA training centers. And worst of all, we were responsible for their creation. Donald Trump is only right insofar as Obama's policies have created the power vacuum which allowed ISIS to exist, and the fact that we also armed them by gun running.
The war in Iraq caused that. Let's just...
What's that?
Come on now.
What was that?
I think the war in Iraq caused that.
Well, we pulled out.
Obama's policies?
It's
never pull out.
That's your own policy. You got to stick by it. Stay consistent. Yeah. So look, with the policy of pulling out against advisors, against generals, comments that we should not pull out of here. If we do, they're not going to be able to keep the country together. Again, this is why I'm against Gary Johnson on leaving Afghanistan the way we are. Again, if we're going to leave this area and we're not going to make it right, if we're not going to nation build, which I don't think we should do, and again I argue energy independence, if we're going to make these countries as unstable as pulling ourselves out of there, removing our military forces and creating the power vacuum that other groups, most likely ISIS, is going to fill that power vacuum. If we're not going to attend to that, then we need to be really careful about leaving these forces. Again, we don't need to be dependent on the oil that makes us care about that region in the first place.
That's the point. I mean, that's honestly the point, and I think you made such a great point about the energy independence, and that it shouldn't even just be about oil. I mean, the idea is it should be about a free market solution to creating. I mean, look at the electric car now, and look at the idea of, all of the different types of, options for energy that we have in this country and that we should be exercising. And it's sad that old habits die hard, and it's sad that politics rules this kind of thing, because it's really jeopardizing not only our national security, but the future of not only this country, but the world. I mean, it's just sad because the free market almost seems like it's eroding. Like it got to a particular peak, and then all of a sudden it started to decline because, bureaucrats and politicians started to realize how this jeopardizes their power, and yet we are all suffering because of it. So, I don't know.
No, I mean, I completely agree. Again, the answers that I'm saying are not nationalist and not big government, not anti-free market. I think that you get off of I don't think that the government has any role in trying to create energy sector jobs. I don't believe that the government can ever create jobs. All they can do is stop coming in between you and what you want to do and saying no less often. That's all they can do.
Yes.
So, and I'm not for us subsidizing money into development of technology. I'm not for subsidizing us going into the energy sector. I'm not for that kind of thing. What I'm saying is cut the regulations, cut the red tape, cut the cost of having employees. Let people practice their own incentive, let the free market actually work, and we'll find a way to get off of this. I argue that if we were left to our own devices, we would see an explosion in technology, we'd see an explosion in energy, health, so many different sectors would see growth, and most of the problems that we would face would be resolved by free market inventions and solutions that people, necessity is the mother of invention. People seeing problems will identify and fix, and that's how I argue this is a free market solution. But you can't just pull the rug out from underneath the people living in Iraq, for example, who aren't ready to defend their nation. Again, I don't think that we should have started nation building, but we don't have the groundwork set up yet to be free market, to have the solutions to where we're not energy independent anymore, to pull the rug out from underneath them. I'm hoping that by the time we do, they would be ready for in the case of Afghanistan, for example. But if we leave, it creates a power vacuum. ISIS or someone else, maybe worse than them, I don't know how you'd be worse than them, but maybe even worse than them, could fill that power vacuum, and you're in a worse situation than you were before, because you're still addicted to this oil that you have no solution to. You aren't allowed. You're not. It's not that we can't make it either. It's not that we couldn't be energy independent. We're just not allowing ourselves to be.
Well, like you said, old habits die hard, and it's really tough in order to change political systems the way that it is. But something's going to have to happen. And honestly, in a way, if I try to prepare myself for the worst, and if I ever saw Donald Trump presidency, maybe it's what we all deserve. Maybe we need a horrible dictator and a new Hitler to wake ourselves up, because look at 70 years after Hitler. I mean, within those 70 years, we really were afraid. We were like, no way, we can't have this again. Maybe we need 4 years of it. Maybe we need somebody that comes in and just says, we're going to wreak havoc and rancor over the entire rest of the world and just do whatever it is that we want to do just based on how we feel over the day, without really creating any kind of an education of policy abroad. And maybe that's just what we need in order for this country to wake up and to go, electing a reality TV star is not what it is that you need to do in order to create a better society. You guys have got to realize that this is the most ridiculous candidate of all time. And when it comes to foreign policy, we're talking about pulling out of NATO, supporting Putin, using nuclear weapons. His comment of why can't we use them if we have them is one of the scariest comments that any presidential candidate has ever made, much less a presidential candidate that actually has a chance of winning. And I'm ashamed of the Republican Party, and I'm ashamed of my friends who actually support that man. Because on foreign policy, this man is a debacle, and on national policy or domestic policy, he is a disgrace.
Okay,
and there's nobody worse.
So again, I'm not of the opinion where, look, I'm disappointed. I wish that we saw things eye to eye. Donald Trump supporters, I wish we saw things eye to eye. And look, I get your perspective. I understand that you think Hillary is so bad, it doesn't matter. We could elect an empty chair and it would be better than Hillary. And you know what? I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree. No president at all is better than Hillary Clinton. However, Donald Trump is ideologically he has his problems. He's a deeply flawed candidate, and I hope that you can at least be intellectually honest and admit that to yourself, even if you're not willing to admit it to me or anyone else. I get it, and I understand that you're going to have to carry some water for the guy that's your guy. I get it, but my problem with this is that he's going to kick the legs out from underneath this checks and balance system here. That basically the only thing holding back the progressive left from completely decimating what's left of the free market is the Republican Party. That's the only thing we have in Congress right now. Otherwise, these guys would be able to do what they want. They have free reign, and I argue that Donald Trump kicks a leg out from underneath that movement, and we have to start from scratch because the GOP will be completely dead at that point. We'll have a party full of Donald Trumps, and that's not free market. That's not small government. And if you think it is, we disagree. But I hope that if Donald Trump gets
elected, if you think it is, you're wrong. I don't even understand where you say we disagree. If you think Donald Trump is for small government, if you think Donald Trump is good for America, if you think Donald Trump has any credibility or credence to be the president of the United States, I'm going to go ahead on record and say you are 100% wrong. You are factually incorrect. You are ideologically incorrect. You are absolutely ridiculous in your assertion. And yet, people who are listening to me right now that are supporters of Trump are just going to be like, no, you're wrong. I just like this guy.
That's why I'm taking a different approach. All right, look, I disagree with them. All right, I will explain why I believe that your ideas are wrong. But I understand why you've come to those conclusions. I get it. Believe me, a lot of that has to do with fear. And if it wasn't for the fact that I
don't like the other side. We're polarized in this country.
If it wasn't for the fact that I knew enough about Donald Trump that I know that he's not who he's claiming to be. Again, he panders, and it's evidence, by the way, this pandering recently, this whole daycare thing that he did for women. It's like a bunch of people were sitting around a table on the Donald Trump campaign, and they said, you know what, Donald Trump is doing really terrible with women. I mean, god awful with women. What can we do to maybe help him with women? And even if it doesn't help with women, maybe it'll...
Or minorities or anything like that.
Maybe it'll help him. We need to give something away. We need to give a handout.
Yeah, let's throw out a handout. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea.
So that's what this is. Again, he's not a conservative. He doesn't believe in those things. His idea, his base is that he can manage the economy better than the free market can itself, which is, again, anti-free market, and he believes in handouts.
He's not even a good businessman, though.
And by the way,
is that even if being a good businessman was a prerequisite to being a president, which it isn't. I mean, you know the only MBA in this country's history as president? You know the only MBA president in this country's history?
Tell me.
You know what I mean by MBA? The only president who ever have earned an MBA in terms of business. Every other one was in something else. It was George W. Bush, who certainly he wasn't a good president.
Okay, but not even just that though. It's also his foreign. I'm sorry, not his foreign policy. His universal health care stance. He says he's going to repeal and replace, and everybody's like, yeah, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. He's talking literally about repealing it with with single payer.
Yeah.
He says the government's going to pay for it. He said he knows that's going to cost him Republican votes, but he doesn't care because he's got a big heart. Even though this is the same guy that used eminent domain to try to steal an old lady's house for limousine parking lot for casinos. But I digress. Let's focus again.
You mean the casino that he bankrupted?
Yes. Let's focus. Russia. We were talking about Russia. I don't know how we got on Donald Trump. I think that was your fault, man.
It's all my fault.
All right, let's focus back on Russia because we haven't even covered a lot of this stuff.
Because I'm gay.
Hold on. Wait a minute. You're gay? Get out of here. You're gay.
What?
That's great. All right, so here we go. Russia. Again, I say that Russia is right in that we are helping ISIS. I say the reason why we're helping ISIS is because the U.S. government has a incentive to keep control of the petrodollar, but also, and I think Russia makes a decent point in this. Again, I don't trust anything they say. I look at everything that they say and question their motivations. They're big on propaganda. But one of the points they made, this guy, this UN ambassador for Russia, he says that we purposefully bombed on this day, yesterday, I believe it was, in order to disrupt the unilateral agreement that they have for de-escalation of arms over there. It's basically a peace treaty that they're trying to do. And
you were using way too many syllables right now, Matt. Would you slow down for me?
So what they're doing is they're trying to basically create peace among the fighters in Syria in order to basically create some kind of stability, and they're trying to have like a peace treaty on all sides. And when this happens, we're supposed to be working in conjunction and sharing intel with Russia. And I think, and I don't know exactly what the Obama administration is thinking. I'm trying to figure this out. Maybe you can help me. Why wouldn't we want to help Russia take out ISIS if it wasn't for the fact, because as I contend that we are throwing a hornet's nest at the feet of our opponent, which is Assad, because he won't sell our oil, and we want that petrodollar and the pipeline going from Saudi Arabia up through Turkey into Europe, which Assad will not allow. So if that's not the motivation for attacking and bombing the Syrian forces in order to help ISIS continue to destabilize that region and get Assad out of power, if that's not our motivation, and also it's not a motivation to disrupt this agreement that we have with Russia in order so that we don't have to share intel so that we don't actually destroy ISIS, what would you say the motivation of the United States would have been? Do you trust them when they say they just had bad intel and they just bombed Syrian government forces on accident?
What I would say is if the gloves don't fit, you must acquit. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I was sitting here trying to think how that applies. I realize it doesn't now. So tell me.
It's the Johnny Cochran defense there. I get it. I mean, like it's the enemy of your enemy is your friend. If not, it's your enemy. And then I don't know. But I mean, I think honestly, I would imagine that Obama probably has as much of a hatred towards Putin as vice versa. And how is it that you work together on a scenario when you hate one another so much? And that's where, if we can see how, in a twisted sense of civility, in the way that the United States and Russia deal with one another today, could you just imagine what would happen if a man who, has accused a man of his same party, in Ted Cruz, he's accused Ted Cruz's dad of being involved in the conspiracy to kill JFK. He has basically said Hillary Clinton's campaign was the founder of ISIS, or that Obama was the founder of ISIS. He's the guy that shoots from the hip and then basically just says whatever he wants to. And then when anybody challenges him on it, not only does he not take responsibility, but in a childish kindergarten playground method says he started it. How could you possibly imagine a presidency like that dealing with a national crisis or an international crisis like this? This is what I'm saying, is that at least Hillary Clinton has balls, literally and figuratively, to handle something like this. But so does Gary Johnson. I mean, because his name is Johnson.
Okay, let's stay on Russia.
I feel that Johnson. The idea of like Russia is that's my point though, is that when you're dealing with Russia, you have to have some serious cojones in order to deal with a country that basically is doing its best in order to make you look bad. And so I think the idea of colluding with a country that is, that we're at odds with is probably one of the major reasons why Obama is not playing ball.
Well,
and I think it's another one of the reasons why.
If we're trying to create the optics that we're playing ball and that we're really trying to go after ISIS and that we want to cooperate with Russia, if this whole thing is about optics, according to that, basically, right? I mean, according to your opinion, that's about optics, right?
Yeah. I mean, political. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so if it is
you
about,
want to make sure that people are. Yeah.
If it is about optics, then why wouldn't you be ultra careful about the moves you make and bomb a Syrian force in Syrian territory, by the way, of their government forces, a few days before the agreement, where you would share information with again, this is an optic nightmare that they just did. If you believe their story, which I don't, again, I think they're trying to topple Assad, and they've All right, so we had a little technical difficulty here. I'm not sure why my internet dropped, but it did. So I'm going to go ahead and have Mark back on the line here. Let me tell him to call back in. Sorry about that, folks. All right. And anyway, so I was where I left off. We created the threat of ISIS. That's why we are in Syria. So we are basically kicking a hornet's nest and throwing it at the feet of our opponents. And we did this by creating the power vacuum. We created the power vacuum by pulling out and leaving the Iraqi forces there. And then we had already armed al-Qaeda in Iraq and in Benghazi, in Libya, and they rushed in and filled that void and became ISIS. Now, we're using ISIS to overthrow Assad, who we can't actually militarily go in and invade because it's not popular in the U.S. here, and we don't want to do that. We haven't wanted to do that. And Obama was thwarted in trying to do that. So they're using ISIS, this hornet's nest, to just attack like crazy over there, and they're bombing these Syrian government forces. So, Mark, would you say that is out of the realm of possibilities? I'm not saying that you agree with it, but do you think that is within the realm of possibilities, that we're trying to do that in order to overthrow Assad, in order to secure this U.S. petrodollar bubble that we are dependent on now?
I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibilities at all. I didn't even think about it, though, before you mentioned it. To me, it was always a humanitarian event, and then I always questioned it because I'm a big questioner and conspiracy theorist as it is. So, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a challenging concept to believe that, we're going to go into war and we're going to attack a country when there's a number of other countries. I mean, look at France. There's a number of countries in the UN who are going after Syria and who have airstrikes in Syria. Do you think they're all for the idea of the U.S. petrodollar?
No, not again. There's different players in this game.
There's different reasons for each of them.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess there's different reasons. But
everybody has their own interest. I mean, some of them may share the same interest, but I think our government in particular is trying to control and secure the U.S. petrodollar. I think Israel has their own interest. I think France has their own interest. I think everybody has their own interest because everybody has a stake in the outcome of what happens in this region because they are dependent on this U.S. petrodollar. So some people are betting against it. like Russia. Some people are betting for it, like America. And it all just depends on where they're coming from. And this is why I look at foreign policy and foreign politics. Is you have to understand they just did this. Why are they doing that? What is the reason for it? What's the incentive behind this with them? France, they have a reason for bombing Syria. It's not just because they want to bomb somebody. They're bombing them because they have a reason. For in this case, I argue France has actually been taking out ISIS targets, by the way. They're pissed off because they've been attacked. And they've been in the state.
They're not a bunch of wimps, are they?
It's what's odd is that they got this information. They got these targets from the United States government who had been sitting on the information and not bombing them. Instead, we've been bombing empty white trucks in the middle of nowhere, sheds in the middle of nowhere, empty field, or I guess empty desert. We're bombing nothing just to say that we're doing some bombing. Yep, we're doing. And then what we are actually doing real targeted, decimating attacks in is against Syrian government forces. So we're actually blowing up Assad and saying that, oh yeah, we're blowing up some rebel force, and Russia's over here saying no, actually that was an Assad force, and you said you were trying to kill ISIS. Why are you blowing up a Syrian government forces when you're going after ISIS? They were directly opposing these ISIS forces, and you came in and devastated them. So this is, and again, we're arming Syrian rebels who we claim are moderates, but are, I argue, ISIS or ISIS affiliates, or at least sympathetic to ISIS, who are opposing Assad. We're arming up this is a proxy war. This is what we have going on. We have a proxy war with Russia right now. Assad is Russia's proxy. The ISIS and the quote unquote moderate rebels are our proxies, and our proxies have taken territory. This is the one thing that the Obama administration wants you to believe that they spent so much money on this U.S.-backed rebel forces in Syria, these moderate rebels, that they were only able to produce 9 people who were trained at the end of this thing. And in the process, you see the Islamic State growing like crazy, getting weapons that are military made. They're getting like U.S. government weapons, anti-tank weapons. They're getting all sorts of. In fact, the weapon that the quote unquote U.S.-backed rebels shot down a Russian plane with, that was a U.S. missile. So they're getting our weapons. And they want us to believe that, the people that we're trying to arm, they're falling apart. We just did a really crappy job. But ISIS is on the rise. They've taken over territory, and we're supposed to believe that we're not arming them up when we know we armed them in Benghazi. Like, this is unbelievable.
Are we talking about Benghazi again?
Benghazi was a gun-running operation to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. I'm not talking about Hillary Clinton. I'm not mentioning Hillary Clinton in this. She did have a part in this. Whatever.
You are talking about a virtuous thing.
So the next thing that I want to talk about here is Russia's cyber threat here, and we got to go through these topics kind of quick here. So first, Mark, how big of a risk do you think hacking is? Russian hacking is?
I think it's huge. I think it's huge.
What can they do?
It's really bad considering. Well, I mean, look at what they've done as far as just hacking into emails and releasing them into the public. And this is what's created like the media, the PR or the pop culture like interest in it. But the idea, I mean, I consider this an act of treason or an act of, this is bad to me. I mean, this is the kind of thing where you can't be taking this lightly. This is an act of espionage. I mean, if you were hacking into people's emails and somehow saying that this is an espionage, then I think you're completely mistaken.
Well, it's not only just the emails. They've been hacking into government servers. They've made attempts.
That could almost be construed as an act of war. I mean, it's definitely espionage.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why Obama is not taking a harsher stance on this.
What would you do?
I mean, it's not like what would I do?
Yeah, like if so Russia is hacking our stuff. What do you, as a president of the United States, what do you do? What's the answer? What's a libertarian answer that you have?
I would create, first off, I'd have a major press conference about it where I'd bring in every single possible media outlet, especially on an international stage, and say, listen, if this is happening to us, it's going to happen to you too. And these are people who are dealing with things in a way that this is absolutely wrong. Now, wait a minute. What if you disagree with what's going on in an email, or you don't like what's going, you don't like the conversation that's going on? Fine, I'm okay with that. But you got to recognize this is what it is, and this is an act of espionage, and to deal with it in a way that is not necessarily going to war, but it definitely is something that is, treated as almost a second-tier act of war. It's just like, listen, you are on high alert. We are going to be continuously letting people know that this is what you people do. And if that's the case, it's got to stop. I don't know.
Just the media.
What do you think? I'm babbling here, but
okay.
I think this is bad. I don't like this at all. I think this is a sign of the times of what's going to come, not just what's happened in the past.
And I definitely agree with you that it is a sign of the times. And this is one of the things that really does concern me, because here, I'm looking at an article right now. This is talking about, this is offthegridnews.com. I've checked the sources on these, so these are actually pretty good sources that they're using, like DHS.gov and things like that. You can check this out. I will share it on my social media right now, in fact. But this is very concerning to me, because what I am seeing is basically a rising threat here from Russia, and how they can attack us through cyber warfare to shut down our power grids. Now, this is I just shared it on our Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. It's Napolitano warns downed power grid is inevitable due to cyber attack. So it's only a matter of time, and Russia has already tested it. We've already caught them, by the way. In Crimea, we tracked the software, the malicious software they used to crash the power grid in Crimea. Remember a few months back, it's probably almost a year ago when I reported about that, this power grid just suddenly went out and nobody knew what happened. I believe this is, first of all, we know that was Russia. At the time, I told you it was likely Russia, and now we come to find out the malicious software is the same stuff that Russian hackers are using. So I believe this is the testing ground for them. They're trying it out, seeing what they're capable of, and they're going to use it here at home. I've told you what the report is about the EMP strike, the electromagnetic pulse strike, that if it took out our power grid, 60% of the U.S. population will be dead within the first 6 months. So I
don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's 60%. 60% of the U.S. population. 180 million people are going to be dead in 6 months if the electricity goes out.
How many people are content? Imagine this: you have no electricity,
you
have no running water,
you have
no trucks, you have no trucks pulling in food, supplies. I'm just telling you, if the U.S. dollar collapses, and if we were in an EMP strike, that would be it for us economically. So all of the problems that I've talked about before are going to come home to roost at that point for sure. But then many Americans will be screwed. Everything that we do, our entire way of life is dependent on electricity like never before. It's so precarious where we are right now, in that there's no back room in the grocery store that has like a year's worth of food for everybody. They have 3 days worth of supplies on the shelves of regular shopping. So if every time there's an emergency, you've seen it with Hurricane Katrina, Sandy, every time that there's a big storm, even when people hear there's going to be a big blizzard, you go to your Walmart and check it out. The shelves are practically empty because people are stocking up on stuff. So
I don't shop at Walmart.
Okay, I'm giving you an example.
Kidding, come on, God.
So anyway, Napolitano warns that it's not a matter of it's not a matter of if we're going to get attacked through cyber warfare to take down our power grid. It is a matter of when. This is a former Department of Homeland Security secretary that's saying this right now. So, okay, that's some issues. But does Russia have that ability? Yes, they did it in Crimea. We have evidence now. We know that they've done this. So, in the fact also that Russia is a wealthy resource country They have a lot of commodities like oil and things like that. They also have control of pipelines, and they're buying up loads of gold. Here's another article. Russia is now the largest buyer or consumer of gold in the world. They went on a buying spree. This is an article written by Cecilia Jameson, and this is on mining.com. I'm sharing this right now on facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow if you want to check it out. But Russia is buying up gold like nobody's business. There's
Russia's buying gold. It's on the move with Mack Worley. Go ahead.
There is speculation now that Russia's currency is now completely backed by gold. People are speculating that. I don't know, but with the fact that the cyber warfare aspect, because this is what we were talking about before, they do have the capability, and if they collapse the world's economy, they're doing all of the steps they have right now in collusion with China, who we're going to talk about in a moment, in order to withstand the storm. Again, they are producing things. They're producing things that people need, and they have control over pipelines of oil, which we need. And by the way, Reagan warned us about this. I'm looking at a report here about how Reagan actually warned us. This is a CIA memo on the Siberian pipeline. This is the archives on CIA.gov here. It's public information. Anybody who wants to look at it can do that. But this was back in the 8th of July, 1981, excuse me. And this CIA memorandum inside the Reagan administration warned that the United States should attempt to dissuade Europeans from consummating the agreement, which is this Siberian pipeline. At a minimum, the Allies should delay the decision pending a joint study of their energy sector, security energy, and changing economic and political environments in the 1980s. The basic arguments are that they can be made. What is that? Are you using?
I'm falling asleep. Sorry, man.
Oh, okay. Well, here, the pipeline will.
Come on, talk about some oil or something. Jeez.
This is what I'm talking about. This is the oil pipeline. They have control over it. So what the memo says is the pipeline will improve future Soviet economic growth and facilitate a military buildup, which the West, especially the United States, will have to counter. That's what we've seen now. This will probably be the most compelling argument to the Europeans, although it wasn't, and they went ahead with this deal anyway. They get about a third of their oil from Russia. Russia really has the ability to turn the screws on the West. The issue here is that Russia's economy is so dependent on the oil production that if they actually start holding other countries hostage, they could collapse their economy. If all the world's economies are collapsing anyway, I see no reason why they wouldn't do this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. What do you think?
Well, I think you're a conspiracy theorist. I think you're paranoid, and I think I got to pee.
Okay. Well, you can step away.
Kidding? No.
Oh, okay.
Come on. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's scary stuff. I mean, the idea that when you're dealing with countries colluding against the United States to hand us basically our ass back to us is a pretty sad thing. But you do have to think to yourself that the United States is a good enough in itself that a lot of countries are not wanting that to happen. And, hopefully there is a resolution to this besides an all-out war or a collapse of the economy. I could be wrong. What do you think?
I think you're wrong. Not that, again, I think there is
then
a way out of
Then you're a racist, and you're a homophobe.
Yeah. I think there is a way out of it, but nobody's going to listen to my way out, and that, again, energy independence, and then we can pull back from hegemony and just worry about ourselves. And our
never
allies.
Pull out.
I said pull back. So, but yeah, we can
pull back, pull out, back up on it.
Okay, all right. Let's go back to Russia here. So, Russia, their hacking capability, their cyber threats. They're also here's an article, in fact, something that I wanted to read about Russia using the Syrian migrant crisis as a weapon. This is from a NATO commander, everyone. on thedailymail.com. A top NATO commander, General Philip Breedlove, warned U.S. lawmakers Tuesday, this article, by the way, is dated March 2016, Tuesday, that Russia is helping Syrian President Bashar al-Assad turn the refugee crisis into a weapon against the West. Again, I argue that's what they're doing. They're creating, they're destabilizing Germany, Sweden. They're causing a destabilizing effect, a rise of neo-Nazism inside these European nations, these rich European nations that are open border and have a welfare state. And now you're seeing a rise of the far right. This is something that Russia is actively trying to do to create instability, not just in Europe, but also our country through Donald Trump. Wait,
is his name really Phil Breedlove?
He's all about breeding love, man.
Sounds like a porn name to me, so go ahead.
It's
Phil Breedlove.
Him and David Axelrod are the only people that their porn name is the same thing as their actual name.
Oh, love it. Good.
Okay.
Philip Breedlove.
Okay, so
that's your name. Oh, God.
So anyway, this top general is saying that Russia is actively trying to do this, and this is why. Again, I've been telling you Russia is trying to destabilize the West. They are also backstopping their currency and colluding with China, who, by the way, just got added to will be added in October to the IMF's SDR currency basket, which makes them now not the primary, but a world reserve currency. And Russia and China are the two biggest buyers of gold right now. What are they doing? Why are they?
Nobody's going to do anything with the ruble. And the U.S. Were you talking about the UN? You were talking about what did you call the Chinese currency? Because I thought it was yuan.
It's renminbi. It's the renminbi that I'm talking about. That's the currency. That's the one that they externally trade. The yuan is the one that they trade internally. But the
okay, that's the one I used when I was in China. Okay, go ahead.
But yeah,
have you ever been to China? That's a fun country.
No, I wish I have.
It's fun.
It
is a good country. It's fun to go visit. Let me tell you. I'm not saying I would want to live there, but it's pretty fun.
We're gonna have to talk off air about like some of your experiences, because I would love to. You seem to me to be very well traveled. Is that correct?
Not nearly as much as some of my friends, but I loved going to China. That was my MBA program, and it was easily the best experience of my life. I thought to myself I was going to hate this country because it's a bunch of communists, pinko, blah, blah, blah. But the food, the culture, the history, the arts, the people, I mean, the nature of the people, and they loved us. They loved Americans. I mean, even as a gay man, I had just a bunch of women just fawning all over me. I thought to myself, God, it reminded me of my straight days. I was like, geez, these women are just like all over me. I mean, I could have bagged any one of these girls if I really wanted it. And granted, I didn't want it, but I got a massage, and they're like, "Oh, you like me?
Okay,
you like
all
me?
right. I'm gonna cut you off right there.
Don't
go there. Don't go there.
Let me tell you,
all
they
right.
like the American boys.
Okay, we'll talk about some of this stuff off air. So we're going to come back from a commercial break in a moment. When we come back, I want to talk about China and start focusing on some of the moves they're making that are geopolitically threatening. Again, this whole episode is about why foreign policy and like linking our arms, with our neighbors and other countries is not necessarily the option. And again, I am a libertarian with conservative leanings, and my conservative leanings are that I think there are bad actors in the world, and I'm trying to illustrate who they are, what they're doing, and why they're doing it. We're going to come right back with China after this break. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back, and now I want to do a deep dive here on what's going on with China. Hey, Mark, you still on the line?
So deep.
Okay.
So deep. Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, let's dive into this here and find out what is China up to nowadays. What are they doing? Again, I've told you that they're buying up oil. I'm sorry, not oil, gold, and they're
buying up also Bitcoin. They're buying a bunch of Bitcoin. Have you heard about this?
No, please tell me about that.
Yeah. So I study Bitcoin a lot, and I study blockchain. And China, I guess, is the largest purchaser of all Bitcoin. So they are purchasing all this cyber currency, and they're thinking that this is either a way to control it all, or that they're ahead of the game. And a lot of their people are digging up Bitcoin. A lot of their people are dealing with the blockchain. If you haven't learned about Bitcoin or blockchain, it's kind of the way of the future. I mean, the same way a lot of us didn't know about the internet in 1991 or 2 is the same way a lot of us don't know about blockchain right now. Mm-hmm. But you got to learn about it. It's pretty powerful stuff, and China is a big mover in it, which to me tells me something about it. You know, I mean, it's the idea that, you know, if China and their currency and their new world order aspect or their approach to it is this, we should pay attention.
And so I argue that there's essentially three forces at work here. Hegemonically speaking, you have the United States government trying to keep control. There's some aspects inside that government that are trying to keep control of this hegemonic power through the petrodollar and keep it going. There's people like George Soros that want to collapse it and want to build a new global government, regional government on top of that. And then, again, I argue that when the currency comes collapsing down, this group thinks that they can manage to control the collapse and replace the U.S. dollar with a global currency. Mark, you disagree? Okay, we'll glaze over that. But with Russia and China, they are the anti-global government movement on that side, because they don't want to play ball. They want to keep their power. They want to have control, and they want to be the ones to take over this. They want to have dual hegemony where they share it amongst themselves, and they're able to impose their will abroad however they see fit, because no one will be left to stop them. So they're anti-United States. They're also anti-globalist in that fact as well. So these are the conflicting interests. So when I say, China is doing their own thing, and trying to build up their own currency, they're doing this not to, be part of a new world order. They want to carve out the world the way they see fit. So with this currency that they have here, here's the article. Let me find it here. China. Okay, here we go. China to launch a yuan swap trading with Russia rubles on Monday. This is back in 2014, just to remind you that this has happened now. This is an article on zerohedge.com titled China to launch yuan swap and trade with Russia rubles on Monday. So the world was slow to wake up the new reality in which China is now the de facto IMF sovereign backstop, as Zero Hedge described 2 weeks ago. This is like 2 years and 2 weeks ago or something like that. China prepares to bail out Russia. So China basically is becoming a really important factor in the central banking leviathan. And they're trying to basically offer an alternative, again, very weak compared to the U.S. dollar, but only because the U.S. dollar is artificially propped up by the petrodollar and the bond market and all of this stuff. again, all that would necessarily take to crash is, let's say China called in their debt from the United States. If they did that, we would have to default on that loan because we don't have the money to pay them back. We're barely making the interest payments on that. So if they wanted to crash us, all they would have to do is say, we want your debt paid, and they could crash us. Right now, they're doing everything in their power to make their currency look better than ours when it crashes. And as I say, they have the ability to crash it.
But Mac, let me see this though, because when you're saying they have the ability to crash it, and you're saying they're going to cash in on something, you understand how bonds work? I mean, bonds don't work just like, hey, I want to go ahead and sell back my bond. You buy a bond in terms of a term rate. You buy them in terms of a time frame. So if I buy a 10-year bond, I can't just go ahead and sell my bond back to the United States in 2 months. Maybe somebody else will buy my bond on the free market for a certain amount of money.
That's what I'm saying.
But the way that bonds, but that doesn't mean that there's automatically a buyer for it. And the more people that are trying to sell it, the less people that are wanting to buy it.
And the value drops, correct?
But the value drops of the bond, which then means that our actual debt is less than what we are having it as.
It hurts them as well, which is why I don't argue this is what they will do, because it goes against their self-interest to actually start that crash, because, again, they won't get paid. But if they think they're not going to get paid anyway, if they think we're going to end up crashing anyway, which I think at this point it's pretty obvious, which is why they're making these moves to make their currency a de facto second choice to the United States. And when the United States goes, again, it will be a pain for them. But I think they're going to try to already, no matter if they cause it or if they don't, they're going. But they do have the ability. Even you would agree that they do have the ability to cause it. It would just hurt themselves, right? Because they wouldn't.
I mean, it's all about perception. It's all about a market. So I mean, like let's say for instance, if you have, like a stock, like say for instance, I own 10 million shares of Microsoft stock, right? If I own 10 million shares of Microsoft stock and I decide I would just want to go ahead and sell them all right now, there might be a market for it, but just by virtue of me trying to sell 10 million shares, people are going to go ahead and say, wait a minute, maybe the value is less. Do you understand what I mean?
It's going to devalue that stock price. The price, kind of like what we saw where they sold billions of dollars in gold futures. Someone just mysteriously did that within a minute in the stock markets a few weeks ago, and it dropped the price of gold artificially. Again, this is a non-profit sale. They're losing money. Someone just out of nowhere decided that, you know what, they're just going to, take all the economic advice that you would possibly have, and they're just going to sell their gold out of and lose money on it. So this is what I argue, that China, if they did that, they could sell. It would just drop the price of the U.S. bond market and pop that bubble, because those bonds are going to be worthless at that point if they call in on
if the value of debt is less, then yes, perhaps maybe they might have to get a higher interest on the next round of bonds. But you're selling it on the free market. You're not selling it back to the U.S. government.
Agreed.
So there's a difference in that you're not necessarily hurting the United States right now. You're going to be hurting, the value of issuing additional debt, which in my opinion might almost be a good idea, because we don't want to continue to issue more debt.
Well, the only way that we would be able to, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only way that we'd be able to prevent the economy from the bond market from busting, which this is a bailout administration that we have, and this whole kind of protecting the U.S. petrodollar and U.S. currency value is dependent on these things. So if they allow the bond market to burst, that means that the U.S. currency starts to appear weaker, and as that appears weaker, people stop buying U.S. dollars to buy oil, because people no longer
slowly but surely it could happen, and I mean, you're absolutely right. Slowly but surely it does work that way. But on a free market, platform, you're not going to sit there and bankrupt it if China all of a sudden says, "Hey, we want all of our money back." There's just no way. I mean, people aren't going to be able to buy it like that.
Well,
and I mean, you're going to have
all that it would take.
The fact that China, if China or Saudi Arabia said, "Hey, we want to go ahead and get all of our money back," the value of those bonds is going to drop so much that nobody on the free market is going to want to go ahead and give it back. Granted, it will hurt our credit rating,
and that will cause us to lose the. If our credit rating goes down,
sure,
we lose the world reserve currency, and China's second choice option here doesn't look so bad, especially because they've stabilized their economy here. One of the things I actually wanted to mention here was how they've managed to actually, with their currency manipulation, which is a terrible economic policy. But here's an article here on ShanghaiDaily.com. 1 year on, lower yuan and fewer jitters. This article is written by Li Qing on August 11, 2016, and I'll share it on my social media when I'm done here. 1 year after China's surprising devaluation of its currency, the central banks seem to have assuaged, which, by the way, I just recently learned means to lessen or mild the severity of. So they've assuaged the market panic as it leads to the yuan slowly lower. So basically, they've managed to calm the instability of their markets and try to basically calm the up and down nature of things where we were seeing big drops. We saw huge drops in like about a year ago of their currency when they were manipulating the currency, and Fox News contributors were saying, "I think that these guys don't know what they're doing. These people, we got enough problems to deal with than China not knowing how to manage their own currency." China, they have a bad economic policy by devaluing their currency, but what they're doing is stabilizing right now. And if they continue to stabilize, and if we continue to keep ourselves over-leveraged as we are, both in debt and our military forces abroad, required to keep the oil flowing. If any of you have seen the movie Dune, the spice must keep flowing kind of deal. This is how it is with the oil. We have to keep the oil flowing because we're addicted to this stuff, and we have no answer here because we don't allow ourselves to be energy independent because we regulate the free market like crazy. So this is
it isn't free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is the concern I have with China. I think that China also, and it should be noted, China has a huge population, and they cannot afford, based on their the way that their top-down, heavy-handed communist approach is, they can't afford instability either. I don't think China wants the instability, which is why I don't think China will purposefully crash the U.S. economy by calling in this debt. I'm just saying they can. But what I think they're preparing for is they see the writing on the wall with the U.S. economy, and they understand these bubbles are going to pop, and they also understand that this money that we owe them, they're never getting it back. And they're taking steps right now to secure their place in the IMF currency basket so that the rest of the world might turn to them if the U.S. dollar goes away. Mark, what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. But, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to say because, I mean, who wants to, cut off their nose to spite their face? I mean, when you're looking at a situation where you're basically going to crash the world economy in order to try to get your currency to be it. You're destroying. I mean, how much? They own $1 trillion of our debt. I mean, you're just going to go ahead and waste that $1 trillion in order to become what? I mean, that's pretty messed up.
Again, I don't think that they're, like I said, I don't actually think that they're going to purposefully collapse it. I think they're preparing for it to collapse, which is why they're making these moves with the IMF.
Yeah, you're preparing for it, not necessarily causing it.
Exactly. So this is where I look at them right now, and the fact that they're colluding with Russia to make the yuan transferable, and there's a lot of different things that they're doing behind the scenes. And again, they're also expanding their military might outward because we've created a power vacuum. Again, U.S. hegemony. The United States government decides they're not going to enforce international law. They're not going to push back against China expanding in the South China Sea. Look, I'm not saying they should, but what I'm saying is that when you don't do those things, when you pull your military might back and you create a power vacuum, it creates conflict. And China is filling that void, as is Russia, as we are seeing. This is a common theme. This is what I've continued to tell you. This is our big problem. If you're going to create the power vacuums, make sure you're protected against them. And we're not doing that. We have no inclination whatsoever to protect ourselves from the economic collapse that is to come, because we're growing the size of government and making it's harder for people to produce things here in the country. And production is the only way that you make wealth in this world. And if you're going to have less production, you're going to have less wealth. I think we should have more wealth. That's just me. But Mark, didn't you say you got to run?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I do got to go. I've loved this segment. This has been one of the best shows that we've had, and I love it. But I do got to go because it's 8 o'clock.
No worries, bud.
Yeah,
we're going. Like I said, we're going over a little bit because we started late. So that's cool. I'll wrap up the next 12 minutes of the show without you. I really appreciate you for coming on, and I had fun talking to you, man. Thanks for coming on.
We love you a long time, and I love your voters, unless they're voting for Donald Trump, and then they need to wreck themselves, check themselves before they're ready to wreck themselves.
Word.
Anyway, I'll talk to you later.
All right, bud. I'll talk to you later. Take care.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. So for the next 12 minutes here, I'm not going to have time to really deep dive into the other topics here. Like I said, I had way too much show for the time that we had. But I do want to mention here that the confrontations here with Iran, with the U.S. Navy, they're up 50% this year. So I want you guys to think about, what is Iran trying to do, especially in the face of this Iran nuclear deal that we were supposed to have with them, and this was supposed to help our relations with them, and now they're challenging us at every turn, and they're trying to open more markets. They're trying to put pressure on the United States to drop sanctions on their aviation. They're trying again. They've violated already this treaty, and they violated UN treaties. So I argue that we have not stopped them from getting a nuclear weapon. They're going to get a nuclear weapon, and I believe that when Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they'll use it. We do not have mutually assured destruction with Iran because they are a religiously led nation, a theocracy, so to speak. So they believe that in order to bring back their God, they have to set the world on fire. And the best way to do that is through nuclear weapons. They've already said that they want to kill Big Satan and Little Satan. Big Satan is the United States. Little Satan is Israel. Look, I'm just saying, I don't think we should do anything at all that makes it easier on these guys. They, believe it or not, they are a threat, and they are, other than the United States now, they are the largest exporter of terrorism in the world. Unfortunately, thanks to our involvement in Syrian conflict and us arming ISIS, training and funding ISIS, we are now the biggest exporter. No one will ever identify that. We're not going to be on our own government list of state sponsors of terrorism, obviously. But Iran is at the top of that list. So just keep that in mind. These guys are not good. If they get nukes, they will use them. Even the left argues that they will use them. In fact, here, let me go to YouTube. I want to illustrate this point. This is a point that the left and we actually agree. The left and the right, we all agree that Iran getting nukes will be bad here. Iran deal. Here we go. Here's the clip.
I love playing Frisbee with my sons.
I love the sound of the waves on the Pacific at sunrise.
I love curling up with a good book.
I love to see my grandkids smile.
But if Congress sabotages the nuclear deal with Iran,
we could be denied the very moments that make our lives worth living.
Why?
Dude, because we'd be dead.
Super dead.
Like totally fried by a major nuclear bomb dead.
I won't be able to play Frisbee with my sons because there won't even be a Frisbee. The Frisbee will be melted.
We will be melted.
Or worse. Toasted?
Yes.
Okay, so they try to make it funny now. But even we agree that if they have a nuke, they'll use it. This is the biggest hole in their argument here is that they believe that they'll get the nuke. And this deal is not strong enough. First of all, they inspect themselves. There are secret deals that our government carved out with them that we can't even see. So they inspect themselves to make sure that they're in compliance with it. And again, we're essentially only delaying the process here. We basically said, yeah, you can do it for energy purposes, but you can't go past this step, and we're not going to inspect. And there's facilities that are blacklisted for us to even inspect anyway. If we wanted to come in and inspect, we cannot. There's facilities that we actually can. And then even if we want to conduct an inspection and we into the areas that we're actually allowed to go if we wanted to, we have to give a huge notice of time to let them know that we're going to do it, like 30 days or something like that. And by then they could have moved all the material, all the stuff that we're going to check out. So, again, this deal will not prevent them from getting a nuke. And even the left agrees that if Iran gets a nuke, we could die. Speaking of nuclear weapons, you may have heard that North Korea has been testing nuclear weapons. North Korea has been involved in a lot of issues with this in the past already. But let's go ahead and look at what North Korea recently has done here. I have an article, and this is more on the response here. Japan, South Korea, and the U.S. release a joint statement to warn North Korea about their provocative actions. This article is on JapanDailyPress.com. I'll share it on our website or Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow to show the world their solidarity when it comes to dealing with the threat coming from North Korea. Japan, South Korea, and the United States released a joint statement on Monday after trilateral talks with the high-ranking officials. They say that the reclusive state will, quote, pay the price, unquote, if they carry out another nuclear test, despite warnings from the international community and the United Nations. Now, let me tell you something a little more scary. DailyMail.com article titled, Kim's Secret Weapon, North Korea is capable of striking U.S. with a nuclear electromagnetic pulse attack. So, keep this information in mind. I will share both of these articles on our Facebook here. And now I want you to listen to the effects here of a electromagnetic pulse. One of the things that we should actually, by the way, here before we talk about the effects, a GAO report. This is on CNSNews.com. The U.S. is still not prepared for a possible EMP attack. So, 2 weeks after, this is an article from May 3rd, 2016. 2 weeks after North Korea threatened to launch nuclear strikes against the U.S. government the U.S. Government Accountability Office reported that the federal government has still not implemented all of the recommendations made 8 years ago to prevent catastrophic blackouts caused by electromagnetic pulse attack. I've been saying that this is the biggest threat. This may not actually be the biggest threat, in that Russia could just turn our electricity off with a computer. But now North Korea has this ability to do an EMP attack. There's a lot of different things. Basically, long story short, I think that the EMP, if I'm remembering right, can have effects 1,000 something miles away. It can disrupt. I think it was in Hawaii. Let me look at this here. Here we go. It was not until the United States began high-altitude nuclear testing. This is another article on Heritage.com, by the way. High-altitude nuclear testing over the Pacific in the early 1960s that potential devastating effects of EMP on even distant ground targets attracted widespread attention within the U.S. defense community. In 1962, Starfish Prime test, during which a nuclear weapon was detonated 400 kilometers, 250 miles above Johnston Island in the Pacific. Electrical equipment more than 1,400 kilometers away, 870 miles away from Hawaii. Okay, so it was in Hawaii where they experienced 870-mile range on this. Russia, by the way, is developing technology that is far more advanced EMP-wise. That would project this EMP much, much further. So it wouldn't take very many EMPs to go off, any of these nuclear weapons detonated in our atmosphere, to create a crippling EMP on our electrical grid, which we're not prepared for, according to the Government Accountability Office. Something to be concerned about. So, again, I wish we could have had more time on today's show to really focus on more on North Korea, more on Iran and these deals. But again, another thing with Iran that we should keep in mind is Iran has been selling oil like it's going out of style. I mean, since the sanctions have been released, Iran has been flooding the market with oil, and now they're starting to talk about the fact that maybe they would consider slowing down their production. So try to figure out why that would be, especially when you keep into mind that we're heading into fall, and traditionally oil prices fall in the fall. They go down because demand lessens. There's not as much summer driving. This has been a trend that we've noticed year after year after year. So the price of oil is already falling down. Iran's trying to build themselves up economically. They're trying to loosen these sanctions. And at the same time, they're opposing the United States. I believe that they're trying to build a nuclear bomb. I think they want this bomb. I think they're going to use it. The left agrees with me on that, but I digress. We're pretty much out of time. We're going to have to pick up some more of these topics here on... Actually, I pretty much covered. I think I somehow managed to cover most of this, except for why libertarians should reconsider their foreign policy on open borders relating to foreign nation immigration and mass immigration. Actually, I did. I covered all of this. How did I do this? This is crazy. Anyway, I just want to say, MacPack, thank you so much for tuning in week after week. You guys are the tip of the spear and the reason why we do this show. Thank you so much for your continued support. If you've made it this far in the program, first of all, what I want is for you to leave me some feedback. What do you think? What did you think of the show? Was it okay? Did we do a good job? What are your thoughts on what we talked about? I'm just curious. I want to hear from you. Secondly, if you could share the show with somebody else, say, hey, I want you to listen to this Mac guy. He's he's crazy. He's kind of off the wall, but check him out. See what you think. If you would do that, I would be much obliged. Thank you so much. Also, don't forget to check us out at our website. If you're new to the program, we broadcast every Sunday at OnTheMoveShow.com or on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us over at Spreaker, if you will. On iTunes as well. I would certainly appreciate that. We're over there. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube. Share that out. I really appreciate that. Follow us on Twitter. You can stay in contact with us on the show at OnTheMoveShow. Leave us your thoughts. If it's incredibly thought-provoking, I'll put it on the next episode. Get us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow to do the same thing. You can like us on there. Bottom line, if you support the program, share out that stuff. I really would appreciate it. And secondly, if you would like to help us, fund this operation, we have a store. So feel free to check out our shop link on our homepage, OnTheMoveShow.com. Click on the shop link, and your proceeds on there, your purchases will go towards making the show bigger and better as we pour money into things like audio equipment and better computers and all that good stuff. So anyway, we got to take off. I certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, MacPack. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.